Post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's Newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers. I agree. And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christies. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christies tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show, live on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, the Labour Party have gone to civil war over Dine Abbott, with Deputy Leader Angela Rayner sensationally claiming that Abbott should be allowed to stand as a candidate in a direct challenge to Sir Keir Starmer. Next up, Reform have announced an employer immigration tax to wean big business off the so-called drug of cheap foreign labour. And Nigel Farage claimed he has no interest whatsoever in a deal with the Tories, who he claimed betrayed him. Later in the show, we'll speak to leader Richard Tice. And it's day 8 of the general election campaign, and today Rishi Sunak continues his high-energy tour in Buckinghamshire. But with a new poll showing he's failing to narrow the gap with Labour, does he have his work cut out for him? Well, we'll cross live to the Prime Minister at around about 3:25. And Donald Trump is set to hire billionaire Elon Musk as an executive advisor on border security and the economy if he's elected as president. Is the plan bonkers or brilliant? That's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Delighted to have your company. We've got an action-packed show today and a varied one. The Labour civil war over the left trundles on and on. Dine Abbott's the problem that won't go away. Nobody's even talking about what Sir Keir Starmer's policies are today. That is the bad news. They just can't get away from. Plus, later in the show, we're going to have a bit of fun. I'll be looking back in time. That's me in a former life. I was the editor of men's magazine Loaded. Well, 40 years on to the week, it's relaunched with a new look and a new editor who's a woman, and she's ruffling feathers, just like I did all those years ago. I'll be joined by her later in the show, why she thinks it's a good idea to bring back the iconic men's mag for men who should know better. Now, as usual, get in touch the usual ways. Send us your views, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. Get stuck in. I'll read out as many as I can before the end of the show. Let's kick off now with your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top story, some breaking news first. A primary school teacher has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 20 years for killing her partner. Fiona Beale, who's 50 years old, stabbed Nicholas Billingham and buried his body in their garden. The Old Bailey heard she killed him in cold blood before impersonating him in text messages to try to convince his family that he was safe and well. Labour's deputy leader says she doesn't see any reason why Diane Abbott cannot stand as an MP with the party at the general election. According to reports in The Guardian, Angela Rayner believes Miss Abbott hasn't been treated fairly or appropriately. The veteran MP had the Labour whip restored this week after a long suspension. She's accused Sir Keir Starmer of culling the party's left wing. But Sir Keir says he wants the highest quality candidates and described her as a trailblazer. Meanwhile, Labour's election campaign is continuing, with the party's leader assuring voters that pledges to cut NHS waiting lists will not require any new taxes.
Well, as you would expect with this Change Labour Party, every proposal that we put on the table is fully costed and fully funded. And we've been really clear about not raising income tax and NI, and we've said repeatedly that nothing in our plans require us to raise tax, and that's why we've been able to set out our position on VAT as well. And that's in stark contrast to a government that's taken the tax burden on working people to the highest level since the war, and during this campaign is showing it hasn't learnt the lessons because it is putting unfunded tax commitment on the table on top of unfunded tax commitment.
Businesses hiring foreign workers should be subject to an employer immigration tax, according to the Reform UK party. At a campaign event in London, Reform's leader Richard Tice said the new levy would help end what he called a deadly addiction to cheap overseas labour. Joined by the party's honorary president, Nigel Farage, they claimed that mass immigration had driven down wages for British citizens.
There are 9.2 million people here in the UK that are economically inactive. There are well over 5 million people that are on out-of-work benefits. So don't tell me there's a shortage of labour. I think for too many people, work doesn't pay. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to overcome this addiction. If you want to bring in people from overseas, then there's a price to that. Because this great country of ours, this incredible nation, we've all paid for it over decades and decades. So it's not unreasonable to expect you to chip in a bit.
Meanwhile, Sir Ed Davies slid into campaign mode today with a pledge to improve the mental health of young people. He says the Liberal Democrats would increase taxes on social media companies to pay for its plan to install mental health professionals in every school. Sir Ed says the Liberal Democrats are the only party taking the mental health of young people seriously.
Today, the Liberal Democrats have got a really important message on mental health, our children's mental health. And my colleagues Munira Wilson and Daisy Cooper have been out there. I'm talking to you now about our policy is to get a qualified mental health professional in every school, in our primary schools and our secondary schools. And only the Liberal Democrats are arguing for that with a costed programme. It's so important. Our children's mental health has never been in such a crisis. Huge waiting lists for help. And it's not just about their health now, it's how it impacts their whole future.
A 9-year-old girl remains in a critical condition this afternoon after a shooting on a busy high street in East London last night. The child was with her family inside a restaurant on Kingsland High Road in Hackney when shots were fired from a motorbike outside, injuring the girl and 3 others. One of them faces potentially life-changing injuries.
An urgent investigation has been launched to identify and apprehend those responsible. 3 men aged 26, 37 and 42 who were sitting outside a restaurant were taken to hospital for treatment for gunshot wounds. Their conditions are stable, but one potentially faces life-changing injuries. A 9-year-old girl who was inside the restaurant having dinner with her family suffered a gunshot wound and she remains in hospital in a critical condition.
Hundreds of Border Force officers at Heathrow Airport will launch a 3-day strike from tomorrow in a dispute over working hours. The Public and Commercial Services Union says more than 500 of its members working on passport control will walk out in a protest against new rosters. And the King will take part in the Trooping the Colours ceremony next month, though the Princess of Wales will be absent as she continues her recovery from cancer. His Majesty will inspect the soldiers from a carriage rather than the traditional horseback. The celebration sees the royal family gather on the balcony of Buckingham Palace after a display of military pageantry. It'll take place in London on the 15th of June. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Martin.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now we start today with a major development in Labour's ongoing civil war. And the party's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, has said Diane Abbott should be allowed to stand as a Labour candidate if she wants to. Well, Ms Rayner also said the veteran MP has not been treated fairly or appropriately by some Labour colleagues. Well, we're still waiting to find out if Ms Abbott will be Labour's candidate in Hackney North and Stoke Newington. The constituency, of course, that she has represented since 1987. And it had looked like she's one of several left-wing Labour MPs who won't stand for election on July the 4th. Lloyd Russell-Moyle and Faiza Shaheen have both been ditched by the party in the last 24 hours. Well, I'm joined now by our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who has spent the day with the Labour leader, and she joins me live from Abergavenny in South Wales. Catherine, welcome to the show. Another bad news day for the Labour Party. Nobody's even talking about the policies, what's going on the campaign trail. Everybody's talking about the civil war raging back here at HQ, and now, sensationally, Angela Rayner has defied Sir Keir Starmer and come out in full support of Diane Abbott.
Yes, good afternoon, Martin, from Abergavenny, where Sir Keir Starmer was here a little bit earlier, talking with the Welsh First Minister about what he says are Labour's 6 steps to change Wales. They are exactly the same as the 6 steps that he's announced everywhere else, with the addition of a bit of Welsh on the little pledge card. But no one is really talking about that anyway, because all the talk is of Diane Abbott. Will she or will she not be allowed to stand for Labour? Sir Keir Starmer was absolutely non-committal, saying it was a decision for the NEC, but this today sounding much kinder in his language, saying that she'd been a trailblazer, that she'd overcome incredible challenges and suffered horrendous abuse. But Angela Rayner this lunchtime went a lot further. She's come out and said, well, I don't see any reason why Diane Abbott shouldn't stand for Labour if she wants to. That is not the official line. She also goes on to say that it was expected that Diane Abbott was going to choose to retire anyway, and that she's not very impressed with the briefing to the Times newspaper that started all this off. What was supposed to happen, apparently, is that Diane Abbott was going to be given the whip back after a year's delay since she wrote that piece, and then subsequently she would have announced in her own good time that she decided not to stand. But because the election was brought forward by several months, wrong-footing just about everybody, Labour have had to sort this out much quicker, and it's all gone rather wrong. I should mention too that Lloyd Russell-Moyle, he has been told he is suspended, will not stand. Allegations dating back several years, a real supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, as of course was Diane Abbott. But Faiza Shaheen also, she was expecting to be the Labour candidate for Chingford, that's Ian Duncan Smith's seat in Essex. She came within 1,000 votes of 2019. She had a baby only 6 weeks ago. She was out and about campaigning, and then she was told that she had been removed from the selection list. Now, she is incredibly upset and also furious. She is now saying that she is going to take legal action against the Labour Party, and she is saying that she's come to the conclusion that the party has a problem with black and brown people, and that there's been a systemic campaign of racism, Islamophobia and bullying. So up until a day or two ago, Sir Keir Starmer appeared to have done quite an incredible job of apparently uniting the Labour Party, keeping a lid on divisions and rows. That was something that only seemed to be happening within the Conservative Party. That has absolutely changed.
Astonishing stuff. Thank you very much for that update. That's Catherine Forsell there on the campaign trail of the Labour Party in Abergavenny. Of course, we'll come back to you throughout the show. We'll have loads more on Labour's problems. And there's plenty of coverage on our website, gbnews.com. And you've helped to make it the fastest growing national news website in the country. So thank you very much. Now onwards to Reform UK. And they say businesses who hire foreign workers should be subjected to an employer immigration tax. The party's leader, Richard Tice, says the new levy would help to end what he called the UK's deadly addiction to cheap overseas labour. He's been talking to our Home and Security editor, Mark White.
Richard Tice, the employer immigration tax, you're talking about in the first term of Parliament raising up to £20 billion. Does that mean you're wedded to the issue, the prospect of mass migration?
No, actually, what we're wedded to is looking after British workers, in particular young British workers, who are now the victims of wages being suppressed, being depressed for many, many years now, which is the direct consequence of mass immigration. And nobody's had the courage to talk about it before, either because they're embarrassed to talk about immigration or because actually they're economically illiterate and incompetent and actually don't understand. It's literally basic A-level economics. If you increase the supply of something, the price of that goes down. In this case, it's the price of wages.
Is there really that much money to be made by this policy, though? Because in terms of immigration numbers, a huge proportion of the people coming across are students, many others, of course, coming into the health and social care sector who you say won't be affected by this.
Absolutely. So we've done the calculations. So we obviously exclude health and social care. But yes, we think the sums are very significant. And in a sense, the numbers reduce if businesses start to say, actually, I'm not prepared to pay that price. That's exactly what it's designed to do. But as the revenues that it does generate, we can invest those in apprenticeships, in training young people. The role of the British government is not actually to look after people living overseas. The role of the British government is to look after British citizens and to make people feel that work pays. But absolute fundamental basic role in society.
But reforms say, you know, they want to look after the man in the street, the little person, the small business owner. Isn't it the small business owner who is going to be very adversely affected by this? Not the ones employing less than 5, but the other still small businesses who are employing more than that.
Yeah, so we've got the exemption for people with 5 workers or less, and then people have got a choice. And if you say, actually, you know, this person there, they're brilliant, I'm prepared to pay the price. But, you know, you can't ignore the fact that there is a cost to people coming in to live in the UK. And someone's got to pay that bill. And it's not fair that that cost is on the British taxpayer. Maybe that's the reason why everybody's feeling worse off. Maybe that's the reason why there's no growth. So the right thing to do is, we know it worked in the 80s and 90s. So let's actually use what works.
There's been a lot of chatter following comments made by Nigel Farage yesterday about the potential. It seems that he was pointing to the potential for a deal with the Tories. Is that something at all feasible?
Absolutely not. Look, we trusted them in 19. We gave them a massive majority. We're not going to trust them again. But
it might be your only way, really, to secure a candidate.
No, absolute nonsense. We're going to win seats. I've no doubt about that. And the point is, they don't own conservatism. They don't own the right to govern in perpetuity. If you do a bad job, eventually you're going to get fired. The boss is going to give you a couple of chances and then fire you. They've had plenty of chances. They've completely messed up. And they deserve to be fired. And you then say, well, yeah, that's going to allow in Labour. Look, we all know what's going to happen. Look, Labour's going to win this election. We have to be honest about that. I don't like it. I think both these governments are forms of socialism, high taxes, big state, mass immigration. It's a disaster for Britain. That's why our policies that we're putting forward are bold, are different. They are literally the way to save Britain, to get Britain moving again, get Britain working again. And I think people, as more and more people hear about us, then I think people will say, thank heavens for them.
Final area I want to explore. You've spoken today about legal migration, but of course a big issue as well for your party is illegal migration. Are you still wedded to turning back the boats, to picking up those off the small boats and landing them back in France?
110%, you've got to pick people up and safely take them back to France, as opposed to what happens at the moment is they're picked up and taken to Dover.
But has that got any basis in reality,
yes,
though?
Absolutely.
You would completely lose all relations with your closest continental neighbour.
Absolute nonsense. It's the opposite. It will help France reduce the magnet factor. What we need to do is have a joint processing centre in northern France, process people within 2 weeks, have a week of appeal, and then actually the vast majority will be rejected and we will return to where they came from. So it's a huge help for France. This currently is France has got massive illegal migration problems. But I've read the rules. I've read the international treaties. I know which clauses you use. And the truth is that the French authorities are breaking international treaties by not picking up and taking back.
But if you forcibly...
fail, we have the legal right to do that. We should do it as close to the French beaches as possible.
And that can be argued out in the courts. But if you forcibly return people to French shores, it's going to lead to a fundamental breakdown in relations with France, and then all kinds of ramifications are going to follow, surely.
Absolutely nonsense. Completely the opposite. The French will realise that we mean business. So rather than just taking hundreds of millions of pounds of our cash, they've still got huge numbers of illegal migrants coming through France, causing them huge internal society problems. They've got massive problems, as we had. We're doing them a favour. They'll quickly recognise that. And sometimes, yeah, you've actually got to be a strong leader to get stuff done. At the moment, we've got weak, gutless, feeble leadership from Sunak. Starmer's got no idea. He thinks that trying to stop the people smugglers means that no one else will take it up. There's so much money in this. And if you don't understand something, follow the money. Stop the trade. We know it works. It works in Australia.
And that was the Reform UK party leader Richard Tice speaking to Mark White a little bit earlier on. Now, remember, we'll hear live from Rishi Sunak in just a few minutes' time on GB News. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, you know, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? You know, English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, you know, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him to go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling them as that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And,
so,
you know,
Gareth,
speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And
you know what? If I was Welsh, if I were Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:22. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now, later in the show, I'm going to take a trip down memory lane and tell you what I was up to 20 years ago. If you're listening on radio, we are very lucky because TV viewers are currently seeing what I look like back in the day. A little bit more fresh face, although I think I maybe had a couple of drinks. Now, we're still waiting for Rishi Sunak to start the latest event on his UK-wide tour as he tries to convince voters to give him another 5 years in number 10. And the Prime Minister is about to speak to factory workers in Buckinghamshire. When that happens, we'll cross live. But before that, I'm joined by the former Labour MP, Sean Simon. Sean, welcome to the show. I have to ask you, Sean, about the civil war seems to be raging within the Labour Party once again. The Labour left coming back to haunt the party. Everybody should be talking about the launch in Wales today. Nobody is, because Angela Rayner has now sensationally come out and backed Diane Abbott at complete loggerheads with the party leader.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good look, is it? It's not a good look. It's not the left roaring back. It's really it's mismanagement by the, by the leadership operation inside the Labour Party. This shouldn't be happening. Everything was going great. They were, in crude terms, they were winning the general election campaign. The lead, which was supposed to narrow months ago, was holding up, if anything, slightly growing. And then you have this unnecessary row about candidates because they've overplayed their hand. I think you've got what somebody described to me as young men in a hurry, very keen to, get the very best Labour candidates, the very most kind of moderate, go-ahead, sensible Labour candidates and good quality Labour candidates. But increasingly, it seems like they've done it in a bit of a clumsy and unnecessarily rough way. And people like Diane Abbott should probably be a little bit more respected. And I think that's probably what Angela Rayner was saying.
But this won't go away, will it? I mean, Diane Abbott outside Hackney Town Hall last night, surrounded by supporters, looks very defiant, looking like she's digging in and now making this a matter of the fact she's a black woman, that somehow the party is intrinsically racist. This is going to get worse and worse. What needs to be done, Sean? There was a lot of talk about Diane Abbott being convinced to stand down, to take a nice peerage, to go into her dotage quietly. Now that just can't happen, can it?
Well, I mean, it will go away because they have to nominate a candidate by next week, and it'll either be Diane Abbott or it won't. And that'll be the end of it, one way or the other. But I mean, they really should put an end to this before then. Again, one way or the other. Either say that she's the candidate or say that she's not the candidate and nominate somebody else. But dragging this out like this is not doing anybody any favours. And as you say, it's not doing Labour any favours. They've got a good campaign, got a lot of good stories to tell, but as you say, nobody's talking about that. They're all talking about this.
There's also the suspension of Lloyd Russell Moyle earlier on today and the blocking of Faiza Shaheen and also the notion that, as you said, centrist, moderate candidates and even some pals have been parachuted. One of Rachel Reeves' former advisors has been parachuted into Dewsbury. I know locally, I spoke to somebody a minute ago, that's gone down very badly. He's not from the area and it won't please the Muslim community there who are sure to mobilise perhaps behind another party. So there's so much focus on the internal politics of the Labour Party itself. That must be, for you, Sean, as a former MP, incredibly frustrating because nobody's listening to the message of a runaway leader in Sir Keir Starmer at the moment.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I think the positive from their point of view is, as I say, it can't go on for very much longer. And this is quite a long campaign. It's not something that people have talked about much, but this is a 6-week campaign, which is pretty long by modern standards. So presumably, actually, when all this fuss is over in the next couple of days, people will move on and get back to the actual election. I think, to be honest, a long campaign like this, campaign where the bottom line is both the party leaders go round and round the country saying the same things over and over again, it can get a little bit boring. I'm
afraid we have to cut out, Sean, because we now need to cross to the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak.
Policing, also a big fan of our plans to roll out more free childcare to those of you with kids, 30 hours for kids as young as 9 months old, but also a massive advocate in bringing skills and opportunity to young people here in Milton Keynes. But crucially, the two of them are also going to stand up and oppose the Labour Council's plans to put 63,000 homes right here in Milton Keynes, almost doubling the size of the population, without any thought for what that would do to your precious green spaces and without the right infrastructure to go alongside. Look, so they're working very hard for you. Will you just join me in saying thank you to them for everything that they're doing? Thanks, guys. Right. So, look, I know the last few years have been really tough. I know that, you know that. We had a pandemic with all the damage that did. Just as we're recovering, Russia invaded Ukraine, with all the impact that had on everyone and their finances. But I do believe that thanks to all your hard work, the resilience and sacrifice that you've all put in, we are getting through the worst of it now. And you can see that. Inflation is down from 11% to 2%. The economy is now growing faster than all our major competitors. Wages have been rising faster than prices for almost a year now. So hopefully you can see that we've turned a corner and that the plan is working. So the question ahead of us now is, who do you trust to build on that, turn that foundation into a secure future for you, your family, and our country? That's the choice of this election. Do we build on the progress that we've made, or do we go back to square one with no plan and no certainty? Now, with the Labour Party, the only certainty that you'll get is that they're going to put up your taxes. As clear as night follows day, that's what they always do, and that's what they will do. The independent officials at the Treasury have totted up all the things that they said they want to spend money on, looked at the black hole in their plans, and I can tell you what that reveals. It's £2,000. Not my numbers, those are the numbers from the independent Treasury officials. £2,000 worth of tax rises for every working family in our country, and I don't want that to happen to you. I don't think that will do anything for your family's financial security. Now, look, you all watch the telly, you'll know that right now we're living in perhaps the most dangerous and uncertain time that our country has known in decades. Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, working together in a way that undermines our values, threatens our interests, both abroad and at home, threatening the integrity of our borders. Now, these uncertain times call for a clear plan and bold action so that we can chart a course to a more secure future. That's what I'm about. That's what the Conservatives are about. Take the one issue of illegal migration. I am determined to stop the boats, because it's simply not fair that people jump the queue, come to our country illegally, put pressure on local services. And we've got a bold idea to deal with it, making it crystal clear that if people come here illegally, they won't be able to stay, because we'll be able to send them to Rwanda. Now, the penny is dropping across Europe. Multiple other European countries just recently all signing up to a declaration, agreeing that our approach is the right one. Who's the one person who doesn't agree with that? Keir Starmer. He's going to release all the illegal migrants that we've already detained. He's going to cancel the flights, offer an amnesty to illegal migrants, making us the soft touch of Europe, making us a magnet for migrants from across the continent. So whether it's on border security or indeed his refusal to match my plans to increase defence spending, you simply can't trust Labour to keep our country safe. Now, what he wants you to believe is that this election is over before it's even begun, that it's a foregone conclusion. Well, I'm going to work very hard every day for every single vote. I'm going to work hard to earn your trust. And you know what? I don't think the British people like being taken for granted. Now, if you think about it, if he was happy to abandon every single promise that he made to become Labour leader as soon as he got the job, What makes you think that he wouldn't do exactly the same thing if he became Prime Minister? If he doesn't stand for anything himself, how can he stand up for all of you? And what we've been doing in the first week of this campaign is putting bold ideas on the table, a new modern form of national service, protection for our pensioners with the Triple Lock Plus, 100,000 new high-quality apprenticeships. And in response, he's got nothing to say, no ideas, no plan, and you don't deliver any change without having those things. And in contrast, I'm going to keep putting bold ideas on the table, working through our plan, because that's how we deliver a secure future for all of you. And that's a future where we have a renewed sense of confidence in ourselves, in our communities, renewed pride in our country. A Britain where all of your hard work is properly rewarded, and where the opportunities that were there for the previous generation are there for the next. And a Britain where, above all, your safety and our defence is assured. So that's a secure future that I'm working towards. That's a secure future I want for all of you and our country. And with your support, that's a secure future that I can deliver. Thanks very much. Right. Before we just open it up for questions, I was just going to also say thank you to Roger and the team for having me here. And congratulations to all of you. Because of businesses like yours doing the incredible job that you are doing, you may have heard recently that we have overtaken France, the Netherlands and Japan, and we are now the 4th largest export economy in the world. Right? That is something that has happened because of people like you and your hard work. So it's a real pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for having me and the guys, and I'm happy to take some questions. So who's going to go first? Who have we got? Yeah, perfect. We've got someone over here. Great.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, it's good that you sort of mentioned trust there. My mum died in 2020, sort of the height of the pandemic. My brothers couldn't sort of be with us in hospital. I couldn't be there. You probably remember that was the month where all the parties were going on in Downing Street. I think the month after you attended a gathering where you got a fixed penalty notice. So my question was just sort of, how can anyone trust you or the party after things like this?
Yeah. Well, I'm really sorry that you lost your mum, and particularly in those circumstances, because it wasn't easy for so many people during the pandemic, the impact it had on everyone's life. And I can't imagine what it must have been for you not to be able to be with her at that time. It was really tough. And I'm sorry for what was going on in Downing Street. And for my part, I apologised. I showed up to a meeting earlier. As you know, I was working on things to help you and your business and many other families like that. And in fact, it was probably in that same period of time that you got to know me as Chancellor. But most of you didn't know who I was before then, and I popped up on your TV screens, announced the furlough scheme, because I knew that we were going to have to work together to get through that, and it was going to be a difficult time. And hopefully some of you here benefited from some of the support that we put in place, because that was what I was working on during the pandemic. So when you ask, can you trust me, we've had some really big shocks over the past few years with the pandemic, and then what happened with energy bills. And when those things happened, I did everything I could to protect you and your families and help get the country through it, whether it was furlough, whether it was the considerable support with energy bills, because that's who I am as a person. I'm in this to help you, help your family, and particularly when our country goes through tough times, I will always be there to support you. Right, who's next? Where's someone? Yes, sir.
Hi, Rishi. I've got a two-part question, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
so the first question is, what is the current status of the national service conversation, as you brought up earlier regarding national service? And the second part is, when asking young people of their opinion of the government, royal family and current affairs, the general consensus seems to be a negative view. If that is the case, why do you believe there appears to be a lack of expressed patriotism and support for the king and country?
Right. Well, actually, they're linked questions in a way, actually, and a great one. And actually, part of the answer to your second question is why I think national service is the right policy at the right time for our country. And I've been thinking about this for a long time in this job, about, how do we restore that sense of patriotism, pride, and cohesiveness in our society? How do we bring ourselves together and support that? And that's one of the reasons I think national service is going to be great. First and foremost, it's going to give young people incredible skills and opportunities. I think that everyone can agree. They'll have a choice of whether they do a really selective military component or a civic role instead. But it is going to foster that culture of service, bring people together from all walks of life, and strengthen, I'd say, the cohesiveness, the unity of our society. And I think that's really important in this day and age, when there are lots of forces that are pulling us apart, trying to divide us. And then the other practical thing it will do is strengthen our country's resilience and our security to deal with the threats and risks that may come along in the future. So for all those reasons, I think it's a transformational policy. It will become a new rite of passage that everyone goes through and bring us closer together. And I think if we get it right, it will help solve the second part of your question, where actually we do have a renewed sense of service, because I think service gives you purpose. Being part of something that's bigger than yourself is something that's really fulfilling. And as young people go through that together, I think they will have a greater sense of pride in what we stand for and what we are as a country. Excellent question. Where was there? Was a hand over here somewhere, I thought. Maybe, no, it's gone back down. Right, yes, sir.
What will be done to ensure that achieving net support will remain a priority for this government and your party? And also, how will you aid households in achieving it in their own net support in their own households?
Do you mean net zero?
Yes, net zero. Sorry.
Yeah, right. Actually, thank you for the question. So look, I have two young girls. They're 11 and 13. Of course, I believe in climate change. I want us to get to net zero, because that's the right thing to do for my kids, your kids, our grandkids, making sure that we leave the environment in a better state than we found it. The question at this election, the choice at this election, is how do we get there? Right? Now, I've been very clear that we need to get there in a different way to what had been proposed previously. And that means we need to be more serious, hard-headed and pragmatic about it, because there are a couple of things that I want to prioritise. I want to prioritise our country's energy security. We've seen in the last couple of years what's happened, right, when we're held hostage by dictators like Putin. We can't have that happen. So that's why I'm supportive of energy coming out of the North Sea. We're going to need it for decades to come. We're better off getting it here at home. It's good for our economy, good for our jobs, good for our energy security. That's something that the Labour Party opposes. And I also want to prioritise your bills and making sure that we don't unnecessarily burden you with costs. And you said, what help is there? What I don't want to do is force you prematurely to rip out your boiler, upgrade your home, change your car, because those things cost thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds, and we don't need to do them right now. We will do them slowly over time in a measured way, the way other countries are doing them, not race to do it overnight, because that's just going to cost you a fortune, and I want you to have financial security, and I want our country to have energy security. So yes, we're going to get to net zero, but how we're going to get there is going to change if I'm re-elected as Prime Minister, and the choice is very clear, because Keir Starmer and the Labour Party don't believe in British energy from the North Sea, and they don't support my changes to that approach, which is ultimately going to cost all of you thousands of pounds to pay for those changes. Right, next, who have we got? We got, oh, yes.
Hi. You mentioned earlier that the UK is fourth globally for exports. However, manufacturing has been declining in the country for decades, with many manufacturers moving to overseas countries which are cheaper to manufacture. How will yourself and the party support and hopefully grow manufacturing to enable the economy and get the country back on its feet?
So, I'm going to very politely disagree with you, because there was some very good news that we had last year. Actually, because of businesses like yours that are doing an incredible job, we actually overtook France in the size of our manufacturing sector, right? That's what's going on. Because of businesses like yours that are doing such a great job, we're doing really well, right? And I want to make sure that we continue to do well. So there's a couple of things we are doing, and we were talking about them a little bit before, but it's cutting taxes for businesses like this to support your growth. So we made a decision to cut taxes on investment. Manufacturing businesses need to invest in factories like this, incredible, to expand, to grow. So what we've put in place is a significant tax cut for businesses like yours that are investing back in the economy as you do to support your growth, and that will help us grow the economy and create more jobs. And we're also cutting taxes for businesses like yours that invest in R&D. Now, you've got new hydrogen lifts, incredible. It's going to help us get to net zero. That's great. and that's going to be a new product that you're going to be able to sell around the world. So when businesses are coming up with new things, that's positive, and that's why we want to cut taxes on R&D. So those two tax cuts are targeted particularly at manufacturing businesses like yours, and that will help you and lots of others to continue growing, create jobs that are well paid, because that's how we'll grow the economy and continue to overtake many more countries in the size of our manufacturing sector.
Follow-up question.
Yep.
How do we compete against the heavily subsidised machines coming out of China?
Yeah, so look, trade policy has to be fair. And I think, as you and I were discussing earlier, we have someone called the Trade Remedies Authority that look at competition around the world. And if we're being unfairly competed against, then there are rules that are in place and we can take measures against those. But look, I have enormous confidence and faith because of businesses like yours, right? Talking to all of you, seeing what you're doing, right? We have the best people in the world, the best innovation in the world, and with the right support, I think businesses like yours can compete and grow because people know that Britain stands for high quality. And my job is to make sure we also open up lots of markets around the world for you. And that's one of the advantages of Brexit, is that we can sign trade deals, as we are doing, with many, many countries to reduce the barriers for businesses like yours to sell into even more markets. And a lot of the growth in the world isn't coming from Europe anymore, it's coming from the new markets, whether that's India or elsewhere, and we want to make sure it's easier for your business to sell to those markets. So that's what we're doing, taking advantage of Brexit, signing trade deals, opening up brand new markets for you too. So that should all help. Right, I think we've got time for, we've got time for one more if there's one. Yes, go on, sir, and then we'll wrap up.
I wasn't going to ask a question, but the gentleman opened it up where he said about national service. I see it as a good thing, but I want to ask, how are you going to separate the kids who have the so-called postcode wars? Because we're losing a lot of youngsters to knife crime.
Yeah.
How will that be stopped? Because they'll have to mix from wherever they come from.
Yeah. Well, that actually is something that lots of parents have been talking to me about over the past few days since we made the announcement, and they're excited about that. They're excited because for the right reasons, that it will bring kids together from all walks of life. And that's a really powerful thing. Actually goes to your question again. It's about fostering that sense of togetherness. So regardless of where you live, what your postcode is, what your parents do, right, you will be doing something together with lots of other young people. And I think that will be really positive. And just very practically, what parents are saying to me is they're excited about the idea of their kids having something to do that is meaningful. Right, whether it's at the evenings, whether it's at the weekends, over the sense of the year, keeps them out of trouble. It means that their life has some purpose, and that is one of the most powerful things we can do to stop kids getting, led down the wrong track. Right, and a lot of when you ask people about gangs, right, why they join gangs when you talk to youngsters or when you talk to their parents, is because being in that gang gives them a sense of identity, right, and a sense of purpose. So this is something that will give kids a much more positive sense of identity and purpose. And I actually think one of the other benefits of it, we will see that it will be able to reduce crime because we'll be doing something really positive for young people instead. Yeah.
Okay, and that was Rishi Sunak there talking in Milton Keynes, taking question and answer session from workers. And I'm rejoined now by Sean Simon, who's a former Labour Party MP, for his reaction to that speech. Sean, welcome back to the show. Thanks for bearing with us when we had to dramatically cut there to the Prime Minister. I wonder what your reaction was. In particular, there are several clear lines of attack on the Labour Party and specifically on Sir Keir Starmer, saying, as sure as night follows day, the Labour Party will put up your taxes, a £2,000 price he put on that. Also was saying Sir Keir Starmer will release illegal immigrants. He'll stop the flights and keep our country less safe.
There's an element of my reaction to that which actually chimes exactly with what Rishi Sunak said. He said, and it was the thing that the guy who asked the first question immediately picked up on, and it won't just have been me, it will have been huge numbers of people watching at home have picked up on it. Rishi Sunak said, the question is, who do you trust? And then he went on to say all those, they're lies. Like, he just went on to tell a load of lies about Keir Starmer. And when he said, who do you trust? The polls tell us that 80% of people watching that on TV, immediately what they're thinking is, not you, mate. And actually, that's what this election is all about. We all know that the determination in the country to get rid of the Tories is a lot stronger than the warmth of people's embrace for Labour. People aren't necessarily 100% sure about Labour. They haven't, they haven't sealed the deal. Keir Starmer's not Jack Kennedy or Bill Clinton. But what people do know, what they're absolutely sure about, is that they're sick of the Tories and they don't trust Rishi Sunak. They don't like him, and they can tell that he's lying.
Although it's fair to say, Sean Simon, in actual fact, 48% of people don't trust either of them. But thanks for joining us on the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Now, Donald Trump is considering giving Elon Musk a White House advisory role if the former president wins November's elections. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, mixed fortunes in our weather as we head through Friday. Best of the dry, fine weather towards the north and the west, but more cloud across eastern England with some showers and still feeling warm though in that sunshine. If we look at the pressure pattern then, you can see this area of high pressure. It's trying to build in across the UK, so settling things down towards the north and the west. But further east, close to that area of low pressure, more cloud and some rain here. So through Thursday and evening and overnight, we do hang on to more cloud down the eastern parts of England, like I said, with some further showery outbreaks of rain spreading their way southwards and some quite brisk winds here once again. Further towards the north and the west though, drier, clearer and not too cold overnight as we hang on to still that breeze. So temperatures not dropping below 10 to 12 degrees in towns and cities. As we start Friday morning then, we get off to a pretty fine start across parts of Wales and southwest England. Some cloud around to start the morning, but also some sunshine. But then we run into that thicker cloud across central and eastern parts of England with some showery outbreaks of rain affecting Lincolnshire, East Anglia, south east England through the morning. So quite a wet start to the day here. But a fine picture across Northern Ireland, much of Northern England and Scotland. Lots of sunshine to start the day. Just a few showers across the very far north and the west of Scotland. And it's more of the same really as we head through the rest of Friday. Always the thickest of the clouds across central and eastern parts of England with further showery outbreaks of rain spreading their way southwards, particularly across East Anglia and the southeast of England. So by the afternoon, some pretty heavy showers possible across the southeast with some thunder possible here too. But elsewhere though, the further north and the west you go, generally more in the way of sunshine, slightly lighter winds as well. So in that sunshine feeling pleasantly warm. We're looking at highs of 17 to 20 degrees there, which is slightly above where we should be for this time of the year. And it's more of the same as we head into Saturday. High pressure still dominating across most of the country. Still a few showers across the southeast, but elsewhere largely dry. Some cloud around at times, but that cloud will break to give some spells of sunshine. So staying largely settled as we head into Sunday, into the start of next week with some sunshine. Temperatures rising, 23 degrees there possible in the south.
I'm Patrick Christies. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christies tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 3:51 is your time. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, Donald Trump is currently waiting for the verdict in his hush money trial, but he's still thinking about the team he'll put together if he becomes president again in November. Now, I'm joined now by the political psychologist, Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes, who also served as part of Trump's transition team and 2020 campaign. Thanks for joining us. An absolute delight. So, Donald Trump on The Apprentice liked to say, "You're fired." Now it's about to say, "You're hired" to Elon Musk. Is that bonkers or brilliant?
No, it's actually brilliant, Martin, and thank you for having me. You know, Elon Musk has a lot to bring to the party. I mean, if you just think about, he cut 75% of the staff from what was formerly Twitter and is now known as X to save costs. And there has been a major group working on a plan to reduce the costs in the government. But he also is very active with Norman Peltz, and it was Norman who made the most recent introduction with Elon, and they are working on a project to combat any voter fraud going on in this next election. So whatever the spat was 2 years ago between the two of them, they are fast friends now and respect each other very well.
And he's also a billionaire, and he knows a lot of other billionaires, so could bring in the dosh.
Well, actually, Elon has made a statement that he's not contributing to either one of the candidates, which I actually think is very positive. It takes the money out of it, but it gives him his voice. And he is not for Biden, and he hopes to use X as a platform to support Donald Trump.
Do you think there'll be a backlash against Elon Musk? We've already seen one on Twitter. Aligning with Trump is toxic in the States, isn't it?
No. Well, let me put it this way. For a particular group of people, of course, they will make it toxic. But the amount of support that he has and the growing support, how it continues, it's right there. And so when you think about the U.S. mainstream media doing all the negative stuff about Trump, just think about this. In prime time, whether it's CNN, MSNBC, the most viewership they have is 450,000 viewers out of a country with 330 million people. When you've got Tucker Carlson, who has 2 or 3 million that watch a simple podcast.
Okay,
so
I'm afraid Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes, we have to leave it there. No doubt, actually, their figures might go up if Donald Trump gets back in. Now, we've got to move on. The Labour civil war has taken an unexpected turn this afternoon. Deputy Leader Angela Rayner has backed Diane Abbott on a direct collision course with Sir Keir Starmer. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel. Now, it's your weather with Mark Wilson.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's looking rather changeable through the afternoon across much of the country with a mixture of sunshine and showers, most of the showers though towards the east and still staying fairly breezy. If we look at the pressure pattern then you can see why high pressure is trying to build in from the west but low pressure towards the east, and in between we've got a fairly cool northerly breeze coming in across the country. So through the rest of the day showers largely focused on the east, more organised showery rain spreading its way southwards. Some of that could be heavy as well, but towards the west though here it will become largely dry with some clear spells overnight. Still quite a breeze overnight, particularly towards that eastern coast, but that will stop the temperatures dropping too low. Temperatures 10 to 12 degrees in towns and cities, but cooler in some rural spots across Scotland and northern parts of England. So as we start Friday morning then, we get onto a pretty fine picture across Scotland to start the day. There will be more cloud towards the northern and the western Isles with some shower outbreaks of rain here, but for the bulk of Scotland, as we head into northern England, Northern Ireland as well, it's a fine start to your Friday morning with lots of sunshine from the word go, just a bit of cloud floating around at times. Generally fine too across parts of Wales, southwest England, just 1 or 2 isolated showers, but then we run into much thicker cloud across central and eastern parts of England with that showery rain continuing to affect parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, East Anglia into the southeast of England as well. Now through the day that showery rain will slowly spread its way southwards, but still some further showers into the afternoon. Again, these could be heavy with the risk of some hail and thunder as well. But elsewhere across the country, still some thicker cloud across central and eastern England, but a fine picture to come across northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland into West Wales and southwest England as well. More sunshine, fewer showers, and in that sunshine feeling pleasantly warm as well. We could see 19 or 20 degrees there towards the southwest of England. Now through the rest of Friday into the evening and overnight, still some thicker cloud, a few showers towards the east, but elsewhere largely dry, clear spells. And as we head into the weekend, turning increasingly fine across the country, lots of sunshine, temperatures start to rise as well, particularly in the south, highs of 23 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel. Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. There's some queues in Cambridgeshire on the northbound side of the M11 from junction 11 up towards 12, so towards Cambridge. A collision causing queues back towards Duxford at junction 10. Then there's a breakdown northbound on the M1, Rugby 18 to Catthorpe at 19, so up towards the M6. The inside lane is combed off. It's causing 1 or 2 delays. Also a breakdown on the eastbound M4. It's just after Maidenhead 8 and 9. Again, the inside lane of 4 is a combed off. It's looking slow. Also a breakdown westbound on the M27, slow going, junction 9 at Fareham to Hamble, junction 8. And if you're heading for Eurostar towards Paris, a reporting delay still of up to 1 hour and 10 minutes at the moment. That's at St Pancras International. And for now, that's the very latest update. We're back with more in an hour.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God, are you joking?
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you.
Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hey, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster all across the UK. On today's show, the Labour Party has gone to civil war over Dine Abbott, with Deputy Leader Angela Rayner sensationally claiming that Dine Abbott should be allowed to stand as a Labour candidate in a direct challenge to her leader, Sir Keir Starmer. Next up, the Lib Dems tour of their Heartland seats continues. On Tuesday, Ed Davey fell off a paddleboard. Yesterday, he got on his bike, and today, as you can see, he went down a water slide in a giant donut. Next stop, Alton Towers. And after a boom in asylum seekers led to nationwide protests, tented cities and police clampdowns, Ireland is at a political crossroads as it heads towards the electoral booths, the polling booths for the upcoming EU elections. We'll have the latest from a troubled Ireland, and that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Always a delight to have your company. Now, it's only day 8 of the general election campaign. 5 weeks to go. I can hear you screaming with delight at home. Day 2 of the speeches on the stumps. Rishi Sunak just delivered in Milton Keynes. I made notes on it. It was the same speech as yesterday, practically verbatim. Meanwhile, nobody's talking about what Sir Keir Starmer is talking about because they're all focused on the civil war. Once again, the Labour left is rifting the party, biting them on the backside. Everybody is talking about Dine, but nobody is talking about this general election campaign. Get in touch with this. Did you also hear Richard Tice and Nigel Farage earlier? They launched their employers' immigration tax. Do you think that is a good idea to deter companies from relying on what they call the drug of cheap foreign labour? Get in touch. Who are you going to vote for and why? GBNews.com/your say. But before all of that, let's have your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom today is that the Prime Minister is warning that Labour's net zero policies will hurt Britain's economy. Touring a heavy machinery manufacturer in Buckinghamshire today, Rishi Sunak acknowledged that recent years had been tough, but he says Labour's plan to achieve net zero emissions is too costly.
Now, I've been very clear that we need to get there in a different way to what had been proposed previously. And that means we need to be more serious, hard-headed and pragmatic about it, because there are a couple of things that I want to prioritise. I want to prioritise our country's energy security. We've seen in the last couple of years what's happened, right, when we're held hostage by dictators like Putin. We can't have that happen. So that's why I'm supportive of energy coming out of the North Sea. We're going to need it for decades to come. We're better off getting it here at home. It's good for our economy, good for our jobs, good for our energy security. That's something that the Labour Party opposes.
Rishi Sunak speaking earlier on today. Meanwhile, Labour's deputy leader says she doesn't see any reason why Diane Abbott can't stand as an MP with the party at the general election in July. According to reports in The Guardian, Angela Rayner believes Miss Abbott hasn't been treated fairly or appropriately. The veteran MP had the Labour whip restored this week after a long suspension. She's accused Keir Starmer of culling the party's left wing. So Keir says he wants the highest quality candidates and has described her as a trailblazer. Meanwhile, Labour's election campaign continues, with the party's leader assuring voters that pledges to cut NHS waiting lists won't need any new taxes.
Well, as you would expect with this Change Labour Party, every proposal that we put on the table is fully costed and fully funded. And we've been really clear about not raising income tax and NI, and we've said repeatedly that nothing in our plans require us to raise tax, and that's why we've been able to set out our position on VAT as well. And that's in stark contrast to a government that's taken the tax burden on working people to the highest level since the war, and during this campaign is showing it hasn't learnt the lessons because it is putting unfunded tax commitment on the table on top of unfunded tax commitment.
Sir Keir Starmer. Now, businesses hiring foreign workers should be subject to an employer immigration tax. That's according to the Reform UK party. At a campaign event in London, Reform's leader Richard Tice said the new levy would help end what he called a deadly addiction to cheap overseas labour. Joined by the party's honorary president, Nigel Farage, they claim that mass immigration had driven down wages for British citizens.
There are 9.2 million people here in the UK that are economically inactive. There are well over 5 million people that are on out-of-work benefits. So don't tell me there's a shortage of labour. I think for too many people, work doesn't pay. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to overcome this addiction. If you want to bring in people from overseas, then there's a price to that. Because this great country of ours, this incredible nation, we've all paid for it over decades and decades. So it's not unreasonable to expect you to chip in a bit.
Richard Tice speaking earlier on today. Now let's just bring you some very distressing news from East London. A 9-year-old girl remains in a critical condition this afternoon after a shooting on a busy high street in East London. It happened last night. The child was dining with her family inside a restaurant in Hackney when shots were fired from men outside the restaurant who were riding what's believed to be a stolen motorbike. They injured the girl as well as 3 other people. One of the injured faces potentially life-changing injuries. We'll keep you up to date on that, of course, as information reaches us. And a primary school teacher has been jailed for life with a minimum term to serve of 20 years for killing her partner. Fiona Beale, who's 50, stabbed Nicholas Bellingham and his body was buried in their garden. The Old Bailey heard she killed him in cold blood before then impersonating him on text messages to his family to try to convince them that he was safe and well. The Liberal Democrats have pledged to improve the mental health of young people in their electioneering effort today. The leader, Sir Ed Davey, says the Liberal Democrats would increase taxes on social media companies to pay for its plan to put mental health professionals in every school. Sir Ed said the Lib Dems are the only party taking the mental health of young people seriously.
Today, the Liberal Democrats have got a really important message on mental health, our children's mental health. And my colleagues Munira Wilson and Daisy Cooper have been out there. I'm talking to you now about our policy is to get a qualified mental health professional in every school, in our primary schools and our secondary schools. And only the Liberal Democrats are arguing for that with a costed programme. It's so important. Our children's mental health has never been in such a crisis. Huge waiting lists for help. And it's not just about their health now, it's how it impacts their whole future.
Sir Ed Davey. Just lastly, the King is due to take part in the Trooping the Colour ceremony next month. The Princess of Wales, though absent as she continues with her chemotherapy. The King, we understand, is undergoing treatment for cancer as well himself. So we're told he'll be inspecting troops from the comfort of the royal carriage rather than on horseback in the usual way. The celebration sees the royal family usually gather on the balcony of Buckingham Palace after displays of pomp and military pageantry, all taking place in London on the 15th of June. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Now let's get back to the major development in Labour's ongoing civil war. And the party's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, has said that Diane Abbott should be allowed to stand as a Labour candidate if she wants to. Miss Rayner also said the veteran MP has not been treated fairly or appropriately by some Labour colleagues. Well, we're still waiting to find out if Miss Abbott will be Labour's candidate in Hackney North and Stoke Newington, the constituency, of course, which she's represented since 1987, or whether she will actually stand as an independent. Well, Ms Abbott has even gone as far as to accuse Sir Keir Starmer of carrying out a cull of left-wing candidates, which comes as Lloyd Russell Moyle and Fiaza Shaheen have also been ditched by the party in these past 24 hours. Well, our political correspondent Catherine Forster has spent the day with the Labour leader, and she joins me live now from Abergavenny in South Wales. Catherine, welcome to the show again. We have a dilemma at the top of the Labour Party. They're out and about on the campaign trail trying to tell us fresh ideas. The trouble is nobody's listening because everybody is obsessing about what's going on back here in London, the civil war over Diane Abbott.
Yes, that's right. Here in Abergavenny, Sir Keir Starmer was here along with the Welsh First Minister Vaughan Gething, laying out Labour's 6 steps for Wales. I have to tell you, they're exactly the same 6 steps as has already been announced, so nothing new. A bit of controversy too, because the Welsh First Minister is facing a vote of no confidence next week over £200,000 that he accepted in donations from a man convicted of environmental pollution. So already quite tricky, but much trickier today because the press, to be honest, are not very interested in hearing about these 6 steps yet again, much more interested in asking about Diane Abbott. Now, that story has taken another twist today. Of course, she had been out of the Labour Party for a year. She finally got the whip back a day or two ago, but that was only after it was leaked that she was going to be banned from standing. Now, Sir Sir Keir Starmer has said that's categorically not true, that no decision has been made. It's a matter for the National Executive Committee. So he's trying to sort of not take a position, and we will see what emerges. But Angela Rayner, the deputy Labour leader, fresh from being cleared by the police and HMRC no further action over the council house question, has waded into this lunchtime, saying that she thinks that absolutely Diane Abbott should be allowed to stand if she wants to. Very warm words, saying that she was a trailblazer. Worth saying Keir Starmer said this too, and you know what a huge figure she has been. Angela Rayner also saying that she didn't feel that Diane Abbott had been treated fairly or appropriately. So we don't know what's going to happen, but this is not a good look for a party that Keir Starmer has tried and succeeded until just a couple of days ago in making look and seem united. All those divisions that there used to be, all the infighting, he seemed to have put a lid on it, but no more. It's all coming out into the open. And with Faiza Shaheen, the candidate who thought she was going to be standing against Sir Ian Duncan-Smith in Chingford, she's been told she's not standing either. She's incredibly upset. She's saying Labour has a problem with black and brown people, and she's going to take them to court. So it's all getting very messy.
OK, thank you, Catherine Forster, for that update from Abergavenny in Wales. We'll come back to you later in the show, of course. Now, let's get reactions to the problems facing Sir Keir Starmer now. And I'm joined by Giles Kenningham, who's the former head of press at Number 10. Welcome to the show. Pleasure to have your company, Giles. So, listen, you spent your time advising people, prime ministers, how to get out of a pickle. What would your advice be today to Sir Keir Starmer? He's out on the stump. He's trying to get his ideas across on the election campaign. Nobody's asking him about it. They're focused on this civil war at the heart of the Labour Party. How does he get himself out of this pickle with the press?
Well, look, I think it's hugely problematic for him. His main attack line on the Tories is that they are, they are chaotic, they're dysfunctional, and yet that's exactly what's happening in his own party, which is split, with divisions. And we know that ultimately the electorate, the public, don't vote for divided parties. So I think it is quite damaging. I think what it shows, though, is that Labour so far have managed to avoid scrutiny for quite a long time. They've just been none of the above. And I think, I would argue that it's been much more about a Tory collapse rather than Labour revival. So I do think, yes, this is potentially damaging. I also think, when we talk about Labour, they talk about change, but change to what? They haven't crystallised this vision yet. And what you're seeing is, under the full glare, the full scrutiny of an election campaign, things are this week looking like they're starting to unravel and dissemble for them. We've got obviously the splits and divisions over Diane Abbott. You've got splits and divisions over whether Labour MPs, shadow cabinet ministers, define themselves as a socialist or not. And then you've had this business letter which unravelled quite quickly yesterday over the fact there were dormant companies on a list that Labour put out. They said they were backing them. There was a company on there which was actually owned and run by a Labour candidate, and they had no FTSE 100 companies on there. Now, why do I mention that? I mention that because traditionally the economy, well, it is Labour's Achilles heel. They need to neutralise this issue. And days like yesterday are not going to do anything for their economic credibility.
OK, Giles, now let's move on to Rishi Sunak. You've, of course, advised David Cameron. You can't doubt his enthusiasm. He's out there, he's chipping away, he's full of beans, he's full of positivity. We'll give him that. However, a poll out today is showing that the gap isn't decreasing with the Labour Party. Of course, that doesn't take into account the Dine Abbott debacle. It's not quite landing, is it? And also, I just sat through a speech in Milton Keynes. It was identical to yesterday's speech in Hertfordshire. So my question to you is, what can Rishi Sunak do to put a bit of vim into his campaign?
Well, look, I think you do need to have repetition on the campaign trail. Yes, it can be dull and boring to pockets of the media, but remember that lots of members of the public are only dipping in and out of an election. So you've got to stick to your key messages. Look, what do I think needs to happen? You've got a big moment next week with the TV debates, I think, happening on Tuesday. Now, potentially, the Tories will be hoping that will be a game-changing moment, and probably a moment when, for the first time, many people will be looking at the parties and what's on offer. All the pressure for me at the debate will be on Keir Starmer. He's the front runner. Sunak's got nothing to lose. So I think potentially the Tories will throw the kitchen sink at that in the hope that changes the conversation. But let's have a look at what's going on here. These Labour splits and divisions. Yes, if this just carries on for 24 hours, it probably won't cut through to the public. But if this keeps going for 3, 4, 5 days, then it can become an established narrative, a truism, and it's going to make things a lot trickier and completely change the dynamic of this election.
OK, so very quickly, Giles, if you were in the corner now, if you had Rishi Sunak's ear, he's about to go on TV, he's about to face Keir Starmer, what would you say? Go for the throat?
Yeah, I think, look, where are Labour weak, and where they're weak is on the economy. And I think that is where, the Tories have to make hay. But also, I think, put some challenge him to some definition, because really they're trying to do as little as possible, sail under the radar. I hope that's enough. So yeah, your change to what? Look, it'll be interesting, that debate, because there are two serious, sober politicians, but they're not rock stars, not political rock stars like Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, I would argue David Cameron. So it'll be interesting to see if the gloves do come off, and whether it is an electrifying moment or whether it just is very forgettable.
Well, let's hope we get a bit of a dust-up. Giles Canningham, thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure to have your company, former head of press at Number 10. Thank you very much. Now, Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey was also back on the campaign trail today. He made a splash on a water slide in Somerset while promoting his party's plans to better mental health care in schools. The Liberal Democrats say they plan to tax online companies to pay for it.
We have hundreds of thousands of children and young people who are not getting their treatment quickly, and it's undermining their health now, and it's undermining their future potential, their education and life chances throughout their lives. And so we're going to make that an issue. It's a serious issue. No other parties come up with a programme like the Liberal Democrats have. We've shown how it can be afforded by putting up the digital service taxes on the big social media giants, the Googles and Amazons, who can more than afford it. And if we get that money, we can make sure our children and young people get properly looked after. We want to make sure the NHS recovers, whether it's getting more GPs, more dentists, earlier treatment at hospital, and our package today focuses on the mental health of children. So NHS and care is right at the top of our list. We also want to get the economy back on track. The cost of living crisis is hurting many people. That's got to be tackled. And we've got a strong environmental message, particularly on the sewage scandal, where Conservatives have allowed our rivers and lakes and beaches to be hit by sewage, and they've allowed the water companies to do that. What I am thinking about is this election campaign, and listening to voters and talking to voters, and what they want to hear about is our message, just as you asked a minute ago, and we're getting a great response. We're finding that lots of Labour people realise that in places like this, in Somerset, across the West Country, across the Blue Wall, that if they want to get rid of the Conservatives, they vote Liberal Democrat. But probably more interestingly, and I'd never really seen it before, the number of people who've always voted Conservative, their families have voted Conservative, and they're saying never again. They are absolutely incandescent with anger at the Conservatives, and they're switching to great Liberal Democrats to be their local champions.
Well, our political correspondent Olivia Utley has spent the last few days watching Ed Davey fall into a lake, ride a bike and go down a water slide at very close quarters. And she joins me now. Olivia, got to be said, looks like they're having a lot of fun on that campaign trail.
They absolutely are. Ed Davey seems to be having a whale of a time. He seemed to particularly enjoy falling off the paddleboard 5 times. The Lib Dems' tactic seems to be to get in the headlines as much as possible and remind people that they exist, basically. They've got a bit of a challenge on their hands in that they have to persuade people who don't want to vote Conservative that it's worth voting for the Lib Dems over Labour. But at the same time, Ed Davey really doesn't want to alienate Keir Starmer, because really the dream situation for the Lib Dems is that the polls end up narrowing. We get into a situation where we start talking about a hung parliament, and then you could have a time where Ed Davey could potentially be a kingmaker. So I've interviewed Ed Davey about 4 times over the last few days, and on each occasion I've asked him something along the lines of, do you think Keir Starmer would make a good Prime Minister? And he refuses to say no. He says that this whole campaign is about getting Conservatives unseated in parts of the West Country country, in the southeast. The Lib Dems are determined not to be complacent. They're determined not to be hubristic. Back in 2019, Jo Swinson was the leader of the Liberal Democrats, and her slogan was "Jo Swinson, your next Prime Minister." In the end, the Lib Dems won just 11 seats, and Jo Swinson lost hers to the SNP. This time around, Ed Davey is very keen that this campaign is all about really targeting their resources in certain seats, not talking down the potential of some sort of perhaps compromise or pact with Labour at some point, and ideally unseating a few Conservative cabinet ministers along the way.
Thank you very much, Olivia, for joining us and giving us that full update. Now, what next? Alton Towers. Well, don't go anywhere, because up next we'll be getting the latest on this shocking drive-by shooting in Hackney, which has left a 9-year-old in critical condition. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
How does it work in your home, then, when you're discussing politics, especially with your young son, Nigel?
Well, I mean, we discuss politics rather than argue about it. Both of us are political professionals. We've been in the game a long time, so we understand that. So we're more keen on what is actually going on and how things are working out than clashing over opinions. Now, Claire is a Tory Brexiteer. I'm a Labour Remainer.
Do you think relationships like your own are going to become less and less common?
I think they are, and I think we can see that politics has become very divided, it's become very toxic, and we've lost that art of debating. I'm more than happy to speak to anybody on any subject to do with politics, because I think it's only healthy to listen to someone's opinion. You may not agree with it, you may think that they're ridiculous. However, I think it's really important that you hear those views, because if you only become encased in a bubble of your own opinion, you're never going to learn anything. And I think politics needs that. You need to be able to explore other sides of an argument. It also makes you better at arguing.
Yeah.
And Nigel and I constantly disagree on various bits and pieces, but you learn how to place your argument so much better because you know what the other side are thinking. Now, if we had that across the country and across the House of Commons, we could have so much better debate and so many better different opinions coming through, and it would be a lot healthier.
And polite debate, which always strikes me about you two. You disagree on most things when it comes to politics, but you do so with so much humour and so much respect for one another.
Well, we find politics fun, and so when we bring politics into the home, we want to have fun with it too.
Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
A 9-year-old girl is fighting for her life after she was shot in London last night. 3 men are also in hospital, and one of them potentially faces life-changing injuries. And I'm joined now by our reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, welcome to the show. Bring us up to speed on this traumatic case.
Well, the Detective Chief Superintendent James Conway, who gave an update earlier this afternoon, said that someone knows who is responsible for leaving a 9-year-old girl in a critical condition fighting for her life in a London hospital after last night's shooting. 3 other men also included in that shooting as victims in Dalston, ages 26, 37 and 42. As you said, one of them facing potentially life-changing injuries. And that girl, the child, was having dinner with her family inside the restaurant when at 9:20 a gunman appeared on a motorbike and discharged a firearm into a Turkish restaurant on the Dalston Kingsland High Street. He also hit those three men who were sat outside, and the police understand that the two groups did not know each other. The family on the inside and the men who were also hit are, they understand, separate groups. Mr. Conway also said that the motorbike that the suspect was using was found very close by at a crescent nearby. They believe that that motorbike was stolen, and they have now urged anyone who was at the scene last night in Dalston at 9:20 to bring forward any further information or footage they might have. Because as it stands, a mass shooter who did a drive-by attack that hit a young girl, a 9-year-old, is on the loose in London.
A tragic story. Charlie Peters, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed. Now, moving on, the King will take part in the Trooping the Colours ceremony on the 15th of June, but Kensington Palace has confirmed that the Princess of Wales will miss the Colonel's review on the 8th of June as she continues her cancer recovery in private. And it comes as nearly 1,000 soldiers and around 240 horses from the Household Division performed a khaki rehearsal of the King's birthday parade today. And joining me now to discuss this is GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Cameron, welcome to the show. Let's start with the khaki rehearsal earlier. Looked magnificent.
Yeah, it absolutely was, Martin. Despite the rain, which was a bit on and off, to be honest, it was the first time all the troops were rehearsing in front of a crowd. I'll tell you why later. But first of all, during that rehearsal, we got some news from the royal family, some good news and some bad news, really. The King, Buckingham Palace confirms, will be taking part in Trooping the Colour, his official birthday parade, on the 15th of June. But adaptations are being made because of his ongoing cancer treatment. So instead of riding a horse from Buckingham Palace down the Mall to here at Horse Guards Parade, he will be riding in a carriage instead, similar to what the late Queen used to do in her later years. He will be accompanied by the Queen, but he will also be inspecting the troops from the carriage as well. So he's not going to be on horseback at all. But then at the same time, we got news from Kensington Palace about the Colonel's review. That's essentially the dress rehearsal for the King's birthday parade the week before, happening on the 8th of June. The Princess of Wales is Colonel of the Irish Guards, and it's the Irish Guards who are trooping their colour at the King's birthday parades, and they have informed us that the Princess will not be taking part in that. She is continuing her cancer recovery. It's understood that it's still being made clear that the Princess really wants to keep her medical details private. She wants to be left alone to recover in private as well. So that is exactly what's happening. But I did speak to Lieutenant Colonel James Shaw and Lieutenant Colonel James Colby, and they gave their reaction to the King and the Princess's news.
We wish the Colonel of the Irish Guards the best of best wishes for her recovery. And again, the Irish Guards are hugely proud to have her as their Colonel and want to put on a really special show this year.
It is. It's wonderful. It's wonderful for the Army on behalf of the country to be able to put on a show that is the birthday parade. It's the nearest thing we have to a national day anyway. And for him to now come out of his recovery, it's wonderful for us to be able to put a parade on for him to hopefully cheer him up a bit more.
Well, today was the Brigade Major's review, in other words, a khaki rehearsal, so they weren't wearing their traditional red tunics, they were all in green, but it was the first time that soldiers and the horses were performing in front of a crowd of around 1,000 people, invited from the local community. It's understood the Army really wants to be as inclusive as possible to the local community. The idea of it is to get the horses used to all the noises of the crowds before Trooping the Colour takes place, and also getting their timing in order, because everything is timed to the minute when it comes to the King's birthday parade. All 7 regiments of the Household Division took part in this, but as I said, it was the Irish Guards trooping their colour, and leading all of them will be the Irish Guards mascot, Seamus, who's a 4-year-old Irish wolfhound. He will be leading the parade for the King's birthday parade. He has met the Prince and Princess of Wales in the past, but after a difficult few months for the King and the royal family, I think the Army is very determined to give the King the best birthday parade he's ever had.
Magnificent stuff. What a wonderful message. Thank you very much, Cameron Walker, for that full report. Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, and I'll be grilling, actually, a Tory minister about how his Prime Minister's announcement don't appear to be doing anything positive for the Conservatives in the polls. But first, it's time for your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
headlines this hour, the Prime Minister's warning that Labour's net zero policies will hurt Britain's economy. Touring a heavy machinery plant in Buckinghamshire today, Rishi Sunak acknowledged that recent years had been tough, but he insisted the economy has now turned a corner. He also warned that a Labour government would raise taxes, despite the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves ruling that out. Meanwhile, Labour's deputy leader says she doesn't see any reason why veteran Labour MP Diane Abbott can't stand as an MP with the party in July. The former Shadow Home Secretary had the Labour whip removed and then restored this week after a long suspension. She's accused Sir Keir Starmer of culling the party's left wing. Sir Keir says he wants the highest quality candidates and described her as a trailblazer. Plaid Cymru in Wales is pledging to undo the effects of Brexit in the country by rejoining the single market and customs union. At a campaign launch in Bangor today, the party's leader, Threenap Pureworth, said the Tories had left a trail of destruction, though he cautioned Labour against taking Welsh voters for granted. And a 9-year-old girl remains in a critical condition this afternoon after a shooting on a busy high street in East London last night. The child was with her family inside a restaurant in Hackney when shots were fired from men outside riding a stolen motorbike, injuring the girl and 3 others, one of whom is facing potentially life-changing injuries. Those are the headlines. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Now, in a moment, Tory Minister Anthony Brown will join us live. But first, there's a brand new way for you to get in touch with us here at GB News. And here's Bev Turner with all of the details.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/your say.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to Yorkshire. Firstly, the southbound A1M 2-lane shut from York Junction 44 down towards 43. The M1 interchange delays there around about 90 minutes. So 2-lane shut there at the scene of a collision. There's a breakdown northbound up the M1 35 Rotherham up to Barnsley South at 36, a lane shut. Northbound M11 around Cambridge, Junction 11 heading up towards 12. There's queues back to Duxford at 10 for around 50 minutes, a lane shut there at the scene of a collision. Now, if you're heading clockwise, M25, the entry slip road on at South Mims 23 is closed and queuing. There's no return vehicle, and on Eurostar, still delays of up to an hour and 10 minutes at the moment. That's at St Pancras International. And for now, that's the very latest update.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Apparently alcohol abuse is costing England £27 billion a year. I mean, in fairness, that's the price of 2 rounds in London, Nicholas.
Yeah, tell me about it. Not that I'm a big consumer of alcohol, I'm very Mediterranean in my consumption, but revealed alcohol abuse costs soar to £27 billion a year. So this cost basically encompasses a variety of aspects, from health-related problems, so the cost on the NHS, lack of productivity, people who lose their jobs, social services, and all that. And of course, it has been on the rise, 37% more compared to last time this was studied in 2003. So now Institute of Alcohol Studies and some other groups are pushing or asking for tougher taxes and tougher regulation. But is that the solution? Like in ancient Rome, they said, in medium stat virtus, like moderation, virtue is in moderation. And again, if they're going to raise the price, people like myself or yourself who are moderate consumers, pardon?
You're going to turn to heroin. Because it'll become... I mean, well, this is what's happened in Scotland.
It becomes unaffordable, so...
Yeah, in Scotland, they had minimum unit alcohol pricing, and so it pushes up the cost of getting off your tree for your average Scottish ne'er-do-well who likes to sit on a bus stop and drink a bottle of cider. So instead, they're turning to street drugs, which are cheaper by comparison.
That is just terrible. I like that the alcohol industry have come back on this. A guy called Matt Lambert, who's the chief executive of the Portman Group, and they represent the alcohol industry. And he says that the IAS, that's the group who've created this, have failed to take into account the significant direct economic contribution of the alcohol industry to the wider economic and social benefits of moderate and responsible alcohol consumption. Well, it's so true, isn't it? We've got a declining birth rate. We need people to get drunk and chat each other up.
Yeah. Welcome back. Your time is 4:36. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, loads of you have been getting in touch via gbnews.com/your say. The reaction to Rishi Sunak's speech, as I said, near identical speech to the one he gave yesterday, and it seems you're not particularly impressed. Richard says this. So now Rishi Sunak is blaming the last 4 years on the COVID debacle, which the politicians of all parties supported, lest we forget, and Russia invading Ukraine. How about looking in the mirror for once? Max says this. Who do you trust? We asked. Well, take a look at the polls, Rishi. It appears not you. Charlie very quickly adds, what idiot trusts any politician these days? Charlie, that's direct and to the point. Well, as I said, in the last hour, the Prime Minister was speaking at an event in Buckinghamshire where he reiterated that him and his Conservative Party are the party to build a secure future for Britain, whilst continuing his last line that the Labour leader doesn't stand for anything, adding to his questionably advised tweet earlier today, which said, does anyone actually know what Labour would do if they got into power? Well, let's now speak with Transport Minister Anthony Brown. Anthony, welcome to the show. So Rishi's out. Hi there. Rishi is out on the stump, and you cannot doubt his enthusiasm. He's full of vim, he's giving it his best shot. But the fact of the matter is, Anthony, the polls are saying that the gap isn't closing, and it hasn't since the general election was called. What do you think Rishi Sunak needs to do to really get his message to connect with voters?
Well, the only poll that actually matters is obviously the poll on election day, and there have been many surprises in the past. I remember the 92 election very well. And all we can do is make the case for the policies that we believe in and that we want to bring in over the next 5 years in terms of bringing taxation down, in terms of promoting economic growth. And we think we've got a good track record since 2010. We've had the fastest growing major economy in Europe. We've got crime down by about half. Education standards have shot right up. We've got the best educated children in the Western world now. And we want to carry on that progress. And in terms of the economy, because that is obviously a key feature in this campaign, we've actually got inflation down, as I'm sure you've reported endlessly, down to nearly 2%, back to normal levels of inflation now. I'm sure interest rates will start coming down. That's certainly what economists are expecting. And in the first quarter of this year, the economy is growing far stronger than most people are expecting. Fastest growing in the G7. So we've got things back. We've restored economic stability, and we need to stick with a plan rather than risk it with going back to square one with a Labour government that describes itself as socialist and wants to bring in French-style employment laws that would impose costs on business, strangle the flexible labour market, and undoubtedly lead to higher unemployment.
And Anthony, Rishi Sunak today clear to point out, as sure as night follows day, he said, the Labour Party will put up your taxes, £2,000 per household. He put a price on that, but yet we are currently under the highest taxes since World War II. And our viewers are getting in touch saying we can't keep blaming COVID. We can't keep blaming the war in Russia and Ukraine. When are we going to see some actual difference in people's pockets? Because people really care about the economy more than anything, but they're not seeing any real difference.
Well, look, the COVID and the war in Ukraine were a reality. I mean, they happened, and we spent nearly £500 billion supporting individuals through things like the furlough scheme, supporting businesses, giving them money that makes sure they didn't go under, and the same with support for the cost of living during the cost of living crisis and the high energy prices. That is all support that people really, really welcomed, and that's obviously does need paying for. And unfortunately, that has meant higher taxes. And we want to really, really want to bring taxes down. I can tell you for myself, I absolutely do. I can tell you my colleagues absolutely do. There is absolutely no doubt, there should be no doubt in anyone's mind, that a Conservative government will be far better at bringing taxes down than a Labour government. History shows us that all Labour governments, they really like spending, they don't really like cutting taxes, and they always run out of other people's money. Even under the Tony Blair, the last Labour government, they inherited a golden economic scenario. Really, Gordon Brown was the lucky chancellor inheriting a really strong, powerful economy, but they still managed to run out of money at the end, as we know. And you ask, when are people going to feel the money in their pockets? Well, actually, wages have increased faster than inflation for the last 10 months, meaning people are better off on average each month for the last 10 months. And then we've had the 2 cuts in national insurance, putting £900 a year back in people's pockets, the average employees' pockets. That is all money that people will be able to feel.
OK, Anthony, now we have the first of the televised TV debates coming up on June the 4th. Rishi Sunak wanted 6 of the things to try and make an impact. Does that suggest to you that he favours a live TV debate? Nick Clegg came from nowhere and turned things around on a TV debate. Nigel Farage doesn't do badly at them. Are you expecting a breakthrough in those? And if so, what kind of attack lines do you think that Rishi Sunak should be going for on Sir Keir Starmer?
Well, TV debates are very important for public opinion. We know that. And I know I see each week in Parliament and more Prime Minister's question times, they're not the same as TV debates. They're a very different scenario. But it's clear to me that Rishi Sunak is a far stronger performer and debater than Keir Starmer, who's, despite having been a barrister, is not that quick at thinking on his feet and certainly communicating it. So I'm really confident that Rishi will come across really, really well in these debates. And I really welcome the fact that the public will be able to see the two up against each other. And in particular, the good thing about these debates compared to PMQs is you get a real chance to actually set your stall out. And Rishi Sunak, having been Chancellor, having been Prime Minister for a number of years, is really on top of all the subject matter, knows what he's talking about, has got a detailed plan. Whereas Labour, I find bemusing by them, and I think that the public should be really aware of, is they don't have any plans at all. They've got sort of ambitions. So things like the ambitions they set out, they want to stabilise the economy. It's like, well, we've done that. We've got inflation down to 2%. They want to have the fastest growing economy in the G7. Well, we've done that. But what matters is not their aspiration to do things, but like what actual policies are they going to have? And the only economic policy that I can see that they have is to introduce French-style employment regulations, which their trade union paymasters are calling for. But we know, repeatedly throughout history, that though imposing all those costs on businesses, making it difficult to hire employees, more expensive to hire employees, more expensive to fire employees, means that they employ fewer people. It leads to higher unemployment. Every single Labour government in history has left power with higher unemployment than when it came into power. That is their track record, and they're doing exactly the same again. So you shouldn't listen to their, what their high-level aspirations are. We all share the same thing. We all want economic growth. It's the actual policies that matter, and I think that will come out in a debate. That actually you'll be able to see the difference between Rishi Sunak having a real plan full of details versus some Labour waffle, basically, and high-level mother and apple pie aspiration that really doesn't stand up to scrutiny.
Well, Anthony, Nigel Farage has called it the most boring general election campaign in history. What do you think Rishi Sunak needs to do to really woo us in those debates?
I don't know whether it's the most boring history. As a politician, obviously, I find election campaigns really, really interesting. And I don't know whether you want election campaigns that are too exciting. That normally means something is going wrong somewhere. But all we can do is what we're doing, which is we have our plans. We can talk about our track record. The fact we've brought crime right down, we've restored economic stability in a really, really difficult global scenario. With educational standards have improved dramatically, a lot more money spent on the NHS. We can talk about that. We can talk about our plans for the future and really try and communicate it with the public, but also contrast it with what Labour are doing. Now, whether that's exciting to people or not, I don't know. I find it quite exciting. I certainly think it would be good if the public engage with it, and that's why these TV debates are really good. Because with all due respect to your show, I'm sure people watch your show avidly and love watching interviews with ministers on it. But we know that the TV debates are really do have cut through. People do watch them. They have very high viewership figures, and a lot of people do make up their minds about elections on the back of TV debates. And as I said, I think Rishi performs really well in them. He's got full command of his subject matter, a good plan. I think he'll come across well.
Good, well, let's hope the gloves finally come off. Thanks for talking to us. Transport Minister Anthony Brown. Pleasure to have your company. Now, don't go anywhere, because after a boom in asylum seekers led to nationwide protests, tented cities and police clampdowns, Ireland is at a huge political crossroads. We'll have the latest from a troubled Ireland after this. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, mixed fortunes in our weather as we head through Friday. Best of the dry, fine weather towards the north and the west, but more cloud across eastern England with some showers, and still feeling warm though in that sunshine. If we look at the pressure pattern then, you can see this area of high pressure. It's trying to build in across the UK, so settling things down towards the north and the west. But further east, close to that area of low pressure, more cloud and some rain here. So through Thursday and evening and overnight, we do hang on to more cloud down the eastern parts of England, like I said, with some further showery outbreaks of rain spreading their way southwards and some quite brisk winds here once again. Further towards the north and the west though, drier, clearer, and not too cold overnight, so we hang on to still that breeze. So temperatures not dropping below 10 to 12 degrees in towns and cities. As we start Friday morning then, we get off to a pretty fine start across parts of Wales and southwest England. Some cloud around to start the morning, but also some sunshine. But then we run into that thicker cloud across central and eastern parts of England, with some showery outbreaks of rain affecting Lincolnshire, East Anglia, southeast England through the morning. So quite a wet start to the day here. But a fine picture across Northern Ireland, much of Northern England and Scotland. Lots of sunshine to start the day. Just a few showers across the very far north and the west of Scotland. And it's more of the same really as we head through the rest of Friday. Always the thickest of the clouds across central and eastern parts of England, with further showery outbreaks of rain spreading their way southwards, particularly across East Anglia and the southeast of England. So by the afternoon, some pretty heavy showers possible across the southeast, with some thunder possible here too. But elsewhere though, the further north and the west you go, generally more in the way of sunshine, slightly lighter winds as well. So in that sunshine, feeling pleasantly warm. We're looking at highs of 17 to 20 degrees there, which is slightly above where we should be for this time of the year. And it's more of the same as we head into Saturday. High pressure still dominating across most of the country. Still a few showers across the southeast, but elsewhere largely dry. Some cloud around at times, but that cloud will break to give some spells of sunshine. So staying largely settled as we head into Sunday, into the start of next week, with some sunshine. Temperatures rising, 23 degrees there possible in the south.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's Newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice.
Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:49. I'm Martin Daubney, and this is GB News. Now, it seems the UK's Rwanda plan could be working in a way, because Ireland's in meltdown over mass numbers of migrants apparently coming over from Britain. And this rise of tented cities has led to outbreaks of riots and even petrol bombs across the country. Well, I can now speak with Irish talk show host and broadcaster Niall Boylan. Niall, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have you. You're a fantastic broadcaster, and I'm proud to say that here at GB News, unlike a lot of the establishment media, we have been keeping a very close eye on what's been going on in Ireland and the political divisions it's been caused, and the treatment of citizens, regular citizens who object to mass migration being called far right and worse by the political class and the media. Niall, we're approaching elections in around about a week's time. Tell me, what's the mood like in Ireland, and do you think there's appetite for change?
I think there's more than appetite for change. I mean, we see a government who have been completely ignoring the people, and not just ignoring, they proactively encouraged this, to be honest with you, over the last 5 or 6 years. And when I was working on radio, I had to give it up there recently, but I was working on radio, I was listening to my callers and my audience telling me one thing, and government politicians who I spoke to telling me something completely different. So the disconnect had become huge. So the government are going to get a good kick in this election, I imagine, including the opposition, who've been equally as bad and sat idly by for the last 5 years and did absolutely nothing about it. They're now all scrambling with headlines saying, you know, we're going to take a hard approach to immigration, we're going to charter planes. They're saying all these things now because we've got a week to an election. But the public don't believe them anymore. It's getting worse by the day. Again, for the 5th time in the last 2 months, we've seen these tents being removed. And here's the madness of this. The government are funding NGOs who are providing these tents. The government are coming along, removing them with those big claw diggers that you can see on the screen there, and then giving the NGOs more money to buy more tents to give them the next day. And by the next day, these are all gone today, but by tomorrow, there'll be 50 more tents. And not only that, when they take the tents up, they put these barricades up, so average citizens can't even walk past their own. It's a very famous and beautiful canal that runs through Dublin. It's getting completely out of control, and I'm sure Rishi Sunak is absolutely delighted with himself with his Rwanda plan, because maybe they won't be going to Rwanda, but they're coming to Ireland. That's where they're sending them. And today makes it a lot worse, because we have a High Court case today in Ireland. The Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission are taking the state to court, essentially saying you have an obligation to these asylum seekers to house them or accommodate them, and to triple the money that you're giving them. We're already feeding them, educating them, clothing them, giving them health care, providing them with everything we can. Currently, there's 96,000 of them in accommodation across the country, state accommodation, and now they want to triple the money to give them 339. That's more than pensioners get in this country. It's more than anybody gets in this country, and we're being asked to do this. We're just the land of milk and honey for asylum seekers here.
And Niall, there's a critical housing shortage in Ireland. There's a huge pressure on public services already. All of this is being exacerbated by the scenes we're seeing on the screens. And that leads me to the political backlash. We've had a political consensus on this. We've even got a Taoiseach in Simon Harris recognising the state of Palestine this week. How does that land with voters who simply care about being able to afford to go to school, being able to afford a house, get a doctor's appointment?
I mean, when I speak to people and they say, you know, they're worried that their children are going to leave the country because they can't afford to live in their own cities anymore, their cost of living is rising, they're worried about immigration. Nobody over the last few weeks has turned around to me and said, I wish the government would recognise the state of Palestine. We need to get our own shop in order before we start worrying about the rest of the world or something that's 6,000 or 7,000 miles away. Although, of course, we all, you know, condemn the deplorable scenes we see of war, be it in Ukraine and Russia or Palestine and Gaza. But I mean, we need to get our own house in order, and we're not doing that. And we're seeing, you know, other political parties in the country encouraging this. What they want to do is, let's speed up the process of these applicants for asylum, most of which are coming from the UK to Northern Ireland, by the way. Let's speed up the process to get them into accommodation, where I'm saying, and other people are saying, well, no, you know, people who are genuinely coming from war and fleeing persecution, absolutely look after them, but the majority are not. The Minister for Integration has said himself that over 60% of these people are economic migrants. That's probably a conservative estimate, and most, over 80%, are coming through Northern Ireland from the border. Now, nobody wants to see a border back in Northern Ireland. We fought tooth and nail, of course, during Brexit to keep the backstop out. So I think the only suggestion or solution for us now, and what a lot of people are suggesting, is a border down the Irish Sea. In other words, that we have reception centres and processing at Larne, Belfast, George Best International Airport to stop them coming into Northern Ireland in the first place. In other words, you can keep them.
OK, Niall Border, we have to leave it there. Excellent, as ever. Thank you very much. Now, we've plenty more to bring you in the next hour, including all the latest reaction as Labour Deputy Leader Angela Rayner has backed Dine Abbott. Has she just made Sir Keir Starmer's life even more difficult? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. Now it's your weather, and here's Mark Wilson.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's looking rather changeable through the afternoon across much of the country, with a mixture of sunshine and showers, most of the showers though towards the east and still staying fairly breezy. If we look at the pressure pattern then, you can see why. High pressure is trying to build in from the west, but low pressure towards the east, and in between we've got a fairly cool northerly breeze coming in across the country. So through the rest of the day, showers largely focused on the east, more organised showery rain spreading its way southwards. Some of that could be heavy as well. But towards the west though, here it will become largely dry with some clear spells overnight. overnight. Still quite a breeze overnight, particularly towards that eastern coast, but that will stop the temperatures dropping too low. Temperatures 10 to 12 degrees in towns and cities, but cooler in some rural spots across Scotland and northern parts of England. So as we start Friday morning then, we get off to a pretty fine picture across Scotland to start the day. There will be more cloud towards the northern and the western Isles with some shower outbreaks of rain here. But for the bulk of Scotland, as we head into northern England, Northern Ireland as well, it's a fine start to your Friday morning with lots of sunshine from the word go, just a bit of cloud floating around at times. Generally fine too across parts of Wales, southwest England, just 1 or 2 isolated showers. But then we run into much thicker cloud across central and eastern parts of England with that showery rain continuing to affect parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, East Anglia into the southeast of England as well. Now through the day that showery rain will slowly spread its way southwards, but still some further showers into the afternoon. Again, these could be heavy with the risk of some hail and thunder as well. But elsewhere across the country, still some thicker cloud across central and eastern England, but a fine picture to come across northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland into West Wales and southwest England as well. More sunshine, fewer showers, and in that sunshine feeling pleasantly warm as well. We could see 19 or 20 degrees there towards the southwest of England. Now through the rest of Friday into the evening and overnight, still some thicker cloud, a few showers towards the east, but elsewhere largely dry, clear spells. And as we head into the weekend, turning increasingly fine across the country, lots of sunshine, temperatures start to rise as well, particularly in the south, highs at 23 degrees.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Still significant queues southbound A1M in North Yorkshire now between York Junction 44 and the M1 interchange. That's Junction 43, a lane shut as a collision gets recovered. Delays there of up to an hour and a half. Queues as well northbound up the M11 around Cambridge. Junction 11 to 12, and earlier collisions cleared but still slow in patches back to Duxford at Junction 10. 2 lanes shut northbound up the M1, Hemel Hempstead up to Redbourne Junction 8 to 9. Lanes 3 and 4 are coned off, a collision there causing queues. Still slow clockwise for the M25 towards South Mims at Junction 23. There was an overturned vehicle that's been dealt with, but of course it's in the roadworks, so it's queuing. And on Eurostar, we're still seeing delays of over an hour at the moment at St Pancras International this afternoon. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. Coming up on today's show, the Labour Party has gone to civil war over Dine Abbott, with Deputy Leader Angela Rayner sensationally claiming that Abbott should be allowed to stand as a Labour candidate in a direct challenge to Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer. Next, goat caucuses in bins, music lessons banned, pro-Hamas rallies and no LGBT flags, and 7-year-olds wearing burqas. GB News' Steve Edgington went to America's Muslim town where a politician told him, astonishingly, Islam is America's last hope. And 30 years after it launched, iconic lads magazine Loaded, which I edited for 8 years, is back from the dead. And I'll be joined by the new female editor to find out why she's resurrected the magazine that political correctness love to hate. That's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. It's only day 8 of the general election campaign. 5 weeks to go. Hurrah! I hear you cry at home already. Rishi Sunak giving the same speech in 2 days, twice. Sir Keir Starmer, no one's listening to what he's saying because of this bedlam back at Labour HQ around Dine Abbott, with echoes of historic elections. The Labour Party haunted by its left. I'll be joined by Trevor Kavanagh, the legendary political columnist from The Sun, shortly to say, is this the same old problems for the Labour Party in another election? What can be done about it? And what do you think to the election campaign so far? Have you seen anything to convince you to change your vote? Are you convinced by Rishi's enthusiasm? Are you up for Sir Keir Starmer's change? Or was your eye caught by the Reform Party this morning when they said they would introduce a new immigration employers tax? Get in touch the usual ways, gbnews.com/your say. But before all of that, it's your news headlines, and it's Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom tonight is that the Prime Minister is warning that Labour's net zero policies will hurt Britain's economy. Touring a factory in Buckinghamshire today, Rishi Sunak acknowledged that recent years had been tough, but he said Labour's plan to achieve net zero would be too costly.
Now, I've been very clear that we need to get there in a different way to what had been proposed previously. And that means we need to be more serious, hard-headed and pragmatic about it, because there are a couple of things that I want to prioritise. I want to prioritise our country's energy security. That we've seen in the last couple of years what's happened, right, when we're held hostage by dictators like Putin. We can't have that happen. So that's why I'm supportive of energy coming out of the North Sea. We're going to need it for decades to come. We're better off getting it here at home. It's good for our economy, good for our jobs, good for our energy security. That's something that the Labour Party opposes.
Rishi Sunak. Well, Sir Keir Starmer stood by Wales's First Minister Vaughan Gething today as Labour's general election campaign arrived in Wales. Sir Keir thanked Mr Gething for his leadership and said he was looking forward to a new partnership with the First Minister if Labour takes over in Westminster. Sir Keir said he's proud of Labour's record in Wales and said Mr Gething, who's facing a vote of no confidence next week, is doing a very good job. Meanwhile, Labour's deputy leader says she doesn't see any reason why Diane Abbott, the veteran Labour MP, can't stand as an MP for the party at the general election in July. According to reports in The Guardian, Angela Rayner believes Miss Abbott hasn't been treated fairly or appropriately. The MP had the Labour whip restored this week after a long suspension. She's accused Sir Keir Starmer of culling the party's left wing, but Sir Keir says he wants the highest quality candidates and described her as a trailblazer. The Green Party has been setting out its vision to tackle the cost of living, improve housing and treat Britain's polluted waterways in its campaign launch today. Co-leader Carla Denyer told an event in Bristol this afternoon that Labour had backtracked on its green investments and that the Greens' role in the new Parliament would be vital. Recent polls put the party at 6% and it's hoping to elect 4 MPs at the general election. Businesses hiring foreign workers should be subject to an employer immigration tax. That's according to the Reform UK party. Reform's leader, Richard Tice, said the new levy would help end what he called a deadly addiction to cheap overseas labour. Joined by the party's honorary president, Nigel Farage, they claimed that mass immigration had driven down wages for British citizens.
I think for too many people, work doesn't pay. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to overcome this addiction. If you want to bring in people from overseas, then there's a price to that. Because this great country of ours, this incredible nation, we've all paid for it over decades and decades. So it's not unreasonable to expect you to chip in a bit.
Richard Tice. Now, news of a London street shooting. A 9-year-old girl remains in a critical condition this afternoon after that shooting on a busy high street in East London last night. The child was eating with her family inside a restaurant in Hackney when shots were fired from men outside riding what's believed to be a stolen motorbike, injuring the little girl and 3 others. One of those injured faces potentially life-changing injuries. A primary school teacher has been jailed for life with a minimum term to serve of 20 years for killing her partner. Fiona Beale, who's 50, stabbed Nicholas Billingham and buried his body in their garden. The Old Bailey heard she killed him in cold blood before then impersonating him on text messages to try to convince his family that he was safe and well. Back to politics now, and the Liberal Democrats have been outlining their plan to address concerns over the use of social media in young people environments. So Ed Davey slid into campaign mode today, saying he'd increase taxes on social media companies to pay for mental health professionals in every school to address that. So Ed says the Liberal Democrats are the only party taking the mental health of young people seriously.
Today, the Liberal Democrats have got a really important message on mental health, our children's mental health. And my colleagues Munira Wilson and Daisy Cooper have been out there. I'm talking to you now about our policy is to get a qualified mental health professional in every school, in our primary schools and our secondary schools. And only the Liberal Democrats are arguing for that with a costed programme. It's so important. Our children's mental health has never been in such a crisis. Huge waiting lists for help. And it's not just about their health now, it's how it impacts their whole future.
That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Now, there was a dramatic twist in the tale in Labour's ongoing civil war earlier today, as the party's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, said that Dine Abbott should be allowed to stand as a Labour candidate if she wants to. Well, Miss Rayner also said the veteran MP had not been treated fairly or appropriately by some Labour colleagues. Well, we're still waiting to find out if Miss Abbott will be Labour's candidate in Hackney North and Stoke Newington, of course, the constituency where she's represented since 1987, or if she will follow Jeremy Corbyn's example and instead run as an independent. Well, it had looked like she's one of several left-wing Labour MPs who won't stand for election on the 4th of July. Lloyd Russell-Moyle and Faiza Shaheen have both been ditched by the party in the last 24 hours alone. But here's what Sir Keir Starmer said when he was asked if he's blocking left-wing vote parties from standing.
No, I've said repeatedly over the last 2 years as we've selected our candidates that I want the highest quality candidates. That's been the position for a very long time. The situation in relation to Dine Abbott is that no decision has been taken to bar her. And, you know, we have to remember that she was a trailblazer as an MP. She overcame incredible challenges to achieve what she's achieved in her political career. She literally sort of carved out the path for others to come into politics, and she did all that whilst also being one of the most abused MPs across all political parties. But I've always had the aspiration that we'll have the best quality candidates as we go into this election.
And Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says Dine Abbott is a very important figure in the Labour Party, and she hopes the situation is resolved swiftly.
not involved in any of the processes, and I shouldn't be as a member of the shadow cabinet, so I also don't know the details. I think, obviously we want this all really to be resolved as swiftly as possible, and I think that's important. Diane is a really important figure in the Labour Party and in the Labour movement, and I saw the immensely important work that she did, for example, exposing the Windrush scandal and getting justice for huge numbers of people who were really badly treated by the Home Office, and that's really important.
Well, our political correspondent Catherine Forster spent the day with Sir Keir Starmer, and she joins me live now from Abergavenny in South Wales. Catherine, welcome to the show. So Sir Keir wanted today to be about the general election campaign, instead firefighting a rearguard action because of Diane Abbott. It's been a difficult day for the Labour Party.
Yes, it really has, Martin. Sir Keir Starmer here in Wales to launch their 6 steps for Wales, which are in fact the same as they've been for everywhere else. Nothing really new to see, but it's been totally drowned out, I have to say, by this ongoing mess involving Diane Abbott. Now, originally the plan seems to have been that she would have been given the Labour whip back, and then down the line she would have announced that she was going to retire. Of course, the general election has come quicker than people were expecting, and then some Labour person briefed to the Times the other day that she was going to be banned from standing. Keir Starmer says that's not the case, but it has ignited an almighty row. And both Sir Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper, as you've heard, have basically said it's not up to them whether, she's allowed to stand or not. It's a decision for the NEC. But Angela Rayner, the deputy leader, fresh from being cleared about investigations into the sale of her council house, has come out saying, well, if she wants to stand, she should be able to. She did also say she'd been expecting her to retire, but I don't think for Keir Starmer this intervention from Angela Rayner is particularly helpful, because it is just exposing divisions. He's done an incredible job of keeping a lid on divisions within the Labour Party in recent times. We're more used to seeing infighting amongst the Conservatives, but I think this a reminder that the Labour Party, there are many different factions within it, and some of those voices being raised now because, of course, the people that appear to be on their way out, whether it be Diane Abbott or Lloyd Russell-Moyle or Faiza Shaheen, very much Corbynistas, big supporters of that former Labour leader, so controversial now, and a suspicion among many on the left of the party that this is a purge of the left. Faiza Shaheen, I should say, now taking legal action and accusing the Labour Party of being systemic racism, Islamophobia and bullying is what she says she has experienced. So yes, Keir Starmer trying to talk about the election campaign and get his message across, but today that's being completely drowned out by other things.
And Catherine, Sir Keir Starmer appearing today alongside Welsh First Minister Vaughan Gething, and again a man not without his controversy.
No, indeed. He only became First Minister, I think, about 2 months ago. And he's facing a vote of no confidence next week because during his leadership campaign, he was given a £200,000 donation by a man who'd been twice convicted of environmental offences. Now, to give you an idea, the money that Vaughan Gething had to spend on his Labour leadership campaign was 4 times nearly the amount that his rival had to spend. So obviously that has given him an advantage. So there's been complaints and unhappiness rumbling around about this for some time. It's all come to a head. Now, Keir Starmer says no rules were broken, but not the best look.
Hey, thank
I
you.
think it's absolutely clear that no rules were broken, and Vaughan Gething has answered all the questions that are put to him. The argument that I'm putting forward this morning is what a game changer it would be if we were able to elect in a Westminster Labour government that would work with the Welsh Labour government, delivering for people across Wales. Because up until now, there's been conflict. So I've been working with Vaughan as leader of the opposition. I want to be able to work with him as Prime Minister, because that will absolutely turbo boost the work that we can do delivering for Wales.
So Sir Keir Starmer not wanting at all to get drawn into a discussion of that donation, wanting to focus on what a Westminster Labour government could do along with a Welsh government in Wales. People saying here today, what could a Labour government at both ends of the M4 do for Wales and the country at large?
OK, thank you, Catherine Forster, live from the campaign trail with the Labour Party in Abergavenny. Now, Trevor Kavanagh worked for the Sun newspaper when the newspaper famously backed Tony Blair's Labour Party ahead of the 1997 general election. And Trevor joins us now. Trev, welcome to the show. A delight to have you. Look, the Labour Party has always been dogged by its left wing, even before 1997, the Michael Foot years, the Neil Kinnock years, and again in 97. And here we are again. Is this simply a case of history repeating itself? Does this always happen? And in particular, are there any parallels between now and that famous landslide in 1997?
Well, we had old Labour, we had new Labour, and now we have socialist Labour. As Keir Starmer has confessed, he is a socialist, and yet you have the socialists at war with each other. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn and Diane Abbott would both be proudly socialist and admit the fact that they're socialist, and yet they've both been booted out by Sir Keir Starmer, who is now in trouble with his own party over the way those people have been treated, and particularly Diane Abbott, who is a special case in so many ways. The first black MP in Parliament, the first black MP to hold the sort of position that she's had in the hearts of the Labour loyal membership over several decades. And yet she's been treated in a very furtive way by the leader of the party here. And I think the anger that this has aroused, in any normal circumstances, I think, could have knocked the Labour Party's election campaign sideways.
But in this instance, do you feel that momentum is such behind them, the lead is so big, that they'll get away with this? I mean, the comments that she made around the Jewish community not really being able to experience racism were astonishing. And that would surely have done for the career of almost any other politician.
Well, that's right. And now you've got people on the left accusing Starmer and others of Islamophobia and racism in relation to members of the party. Well, that's an astonishing allegation. This has dominated the news now for nearly 3 days. And I think that when this sort of story goes on for a week or more, it really does begin to erode the position of the party in various ways. So, you know, maybe all bets are off about a landslide Labour victory. I don't know. The simple fact is that the Conservative Party is held in such disrepute in the minds of former voters that I think it's going to be a big struggle to get them back. But the question mark hanging over Keir Starmer, ever since the election was declared, is his trustworthiness and his tendency to change his mind and change his position. When you say Labour is a party of change, in that sense, yes, it is. Keir Starmer changes his mind on every issue that he holds dear 1 minute and changes it the next.
And Trevor, what do you think needs to be done? They gave Corbyn the boot and they've rolled on without him. Diane Abbott, now they need to select a candidate for that seat in the next few days. Do you think they should go with Diane Abbott as that candidate for continuity, for a quiet life? Or will that look weak? Do they need to win from the centre and give her the boot?
It's an extraordinarily difficult situation for Keir Starmer because really it depends upon what Diane Abbott wants to do. She was apparently ready to retire until she was treated so shabbily. I mean, the simple fact is that Keir Starmer would have known, surely, about what stage the inquiry into Diane Abbott was at. And yet he kept saying that it was still ongoing, even though it had ended at Christmas last year. So I think that if Diane Abbott dug her heels in, and she looks potentially to like doing so, and decides to stand as the candidate, I think she would win. I think there's a very good chance that Jeremy Corbyn will win in Islington. That puts two rather big thorns in the side of a Starmer premiership.
Trevor Kavanagh, it's a delight to have you on the show. A journalist I studied myself at Journalism College 30 years ago. The rest were obsessed with The Guardian. I followed you, and look, here we are now. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much, Trevor Kavanagh. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. You get lots more on the problems facing Sir Keir Starmer on our website. And thanks to you, GBNews.com is the fastest growing national news website in the country. It's got all the breaking news and the brilliant analysis that you've come to expect from us here at GB News. Now, £20,000 tax-free has to be won in our Great British Giveaway, but you need to be quick, as lines are going to close tomorrow. Here's all the details that you need for your chance to win all the Wonga.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close tomorrow. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. tomorrow. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now stand by for a special GB News report on America's only Muslim-dominated city where LGBT flags are banned and there are animal sacrifice laws. An astonishing story on Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christies. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christies tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Joint CEO at the UK Sepsis Trust, Dr. Ron Daniels. Very good to see you this morning. Why is it with sepsis we sort of hear very little about it in day-to-day life until there's either a big story or a big tragedy? Why is that? Is it common?
Well, it's astonishing, isn't it? We have a condition here that affects nearly 250,000 people across the UK each year and claims 48,000 lives. And just for context, breast cancer, and I'm not diminishing how horrible that can be, claims 11,000 lives. So sepsis is 4 times more prolific as a killer. I think the reason we don't hear about it is because it doesn't really belong to any particular speciality of doctors. It touches every aspect of healthcare, and therefore there's no professional group to be championing it, which means it needs an advocacy organisation like ours.
My understanding is that it's when your own immune system starts to attack the tissues, but by the time people realise that their temperature isn't just flu or something, they can often be in quite a perilous state.
It arises in people of any age, people with whether or not they've got underlying illness, and it can arise as a consequence of any infection. So it presents hugely differently.
So what do we do?
If you're concerned something is devastatingly wrong, there are 6 key symptoms to look for, and they spell the word sepsis. S for slurred speech or confusion. E for extreme pain in the muscles or joints. P for passing no urine, no water in a day. S for severe breathlessness. I for it feels like I'm going to die, and people really do say that. And then the final S for skin that's mottled or discoloured or very pale. Any one of those 6 in the context of infection, it goes straight to A&E.
The People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:24. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, later this hour, I'm taking a special trip down memory lane and tell you what I was up to 20 years ago. If you're listening on radio, lucky you, because there's my mush on the screen, looking like I was back in the day, slightly pie-eyed as the editor of Loaded magazine. Now, moving on, let's get more ahead of the general election. And Plaid Cymru have launched their campaign today. Rhun ap Iorwerth was joined by Westminster parliamentary leader Liz Saville-Roberts and the party's candidates from across Wales.
In the week and a bit since the heavens opened on Rishi Sunak, I've been on a whistle-stop tour of Wales. I think I've covered half of all the Welsh constituencies already, selling Plaid Cymru's positive message for our country. And the message I'm hearing back from people is clear as daylight. It is time to kick the Tories out of power. They have left a trail of destruction and we cannot get rid of that government quickly enough. But the message is also abundantly clear that people don't want Labour to be taking Wales for granted either. For too long, Wales has been overlooked at Westminster. UK parties and MPs from Wales for the UK parties putting ultimately the Labour or the Conservative whip in London above their nation's interests. Well, Plaid Cymru says no more. Plaid Cymru says no more to austerity. Plaid Cymru says no more to empty promises. Plaid Cymru says no more to narrow-minded nostalgia. And we say no more, don't we, to ignoring Wales at Westminster.
Well, that was Plaid Cymru, and the Green Party also launched their campaign in Bristol with co-leaders Carla Denyer and Adrian Ramsey.
In my home city. Can you believe that it's exactly 5 weeks from today that we'll all be heading to the polling stations? We've had a while to wait, but finally, it's on, and we are ready. I'm sure you can already tell how excited we all are for this moment. Why? Because at the Green Party, we've got something to offer that no other party has. Real hope and real change.
Let's face it, this election is pretty historic. The polling is clear that we're going to see the back of the Conservatives. As you can see from the action in this room and the reaction from people across the country, I think people will be saying, about time too. This has been the most chaotic and destructive period of government that any of us can remember.
So we get in touch in your hundreds, gbnews.com/your say, and unsurprisingly, the big topic of discussion today has been the chaos, the civil war at the heart of the Labour Party, particularly around Angela Rayner defending Diane Abbott. Kevin says this: Angela Rayner, Diane Abbott, what a nightmare that would be for Britain. Can you imagine Angela Rayner for Prime Minister? Well, she won't be the Prime Minister, Kev. She'll be the Deputy PM. Gerald adds this: Labour is all about diversity, so it's only a matter of time before they attacked each other. Gerald, of course, referring to the fact that a lot of people have come out and said within the Labour Party itself, saying that the only reason Diane Abbott is being singled out is because she's black. And elsewhere in the party today, accusations of racism and Islamophobia about other candidates who've been stood down. Mark adds this: if there were any doubt about the influence of the unions and the Labour Party, the Labour left, beg your pardon, on Sir Keir Starmer's actions, then we are seeing it as clear as day over the situation around Diane Abbott. Many people are rightfully fearful of Prime Minister Rayner just around the corner. Again, Mark, she won't be the Prime Minister. She's going to be the Deputy if they get in. Adrian adds this: the Diane Abbott incident clearly shows that the Labour Party can't be trusted. Once again, that the left wing of the Labour Party has come back to haunt them. On a different matter now, of course, it was the troop in the colour khaki practice today. Simon says this: it was a beautiful sight to see our forces on parade. Now redeploy them to assist our overworked Border Force. Great point there. Get to the Border Force and help them out with some of the lads. And Anne quickly says this. What is that Plaid Cymru man on about now? It's Plaid Cymru and the Labour Party that have ruined us here in Wales. And direct and to the point. Now, there's loads more still to come between now and 6 o'clock. I'll talk about the married couple who committed serial dine and dash offences, where people rack up large bills for food and drink before leaving without paying. They've also been jailed. Perhaps they'll enjoy the porridge. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines, and it's Polly Middlehurst.
The headlines this hour. The Prime Minister's warning that Labour will raise taxes despite the shadow Chancellor ruling it out. Touring a factory in Buckinghamshire, Rishi Sunak acknowledged that recent years had been tough on Britain's economy, but he said Labour's spending plans risked undoing progress that had been made. Sir Keir Starmer is standing by Wales's First Minister Vaughan Gething as Labour's campaign arrived in Wales. Sir Keir says he's proud of Labour's record in Wales and said Mr Gething, who's facing a vote of no confidence next week, is doing a very good job. And as you've been seeing, the Green Party has been setting out its vision of tackling the cost of living, improving Britain's housing and treating Britain's polluted waterways in its campaign launch today. Co-leader Carla Denyer told an event in Bristol this afternoon that Labour had backtracked on its green investments and that the Greens' role in the new Parliament would be vital, recent polls putting them at 6%. They're hoping to get about 4 seats at the election. And Plaid Cymru in Wales is pledging to undo the effects of Brexit in Wales by rejoining the single market and the customs union. At a campaign launch in Bangor today, the party's leader, Rhun ap Iorwerth, said the Tories had left a trail of destruction, though he cautioned Labour against taking Welsh voters for granted. And a 9-year-old girl remains in a critical condition in hospital today after a shooting on a busy high street in East London last night. She was with her family dining inside a restaurant in Hackney when shots were fired from men outside riding a stolen motorbike, injuring the girl and 3 others. One of those is facing potentially life-changing injuries. Those are the headlines. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Let's bring you up to date then with today's numbers. And the pound buying you $1.2737 and €1.1751 euros. The price of gold is £1,840.53 an ounce. And the FTSE 100 has closed for the day today at 8,231 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Polly. There's loads more still to come on the show. I've had loads and loads of your say's emails coming in throughout the show. Go for a quick couple one now. James says this: Labour have had 14 years of planning but refused to detail their plans. These are the guys who plan to build thousands of houses annually. Can we trust them? Now, quickly moving on to a special report from GB News' US correspondent Stephen Edgington on America's only Muslim-dominated city. Hamtramck in Michigan has radically transformed with bans on LGBT flags, animal sacrifice laws and the call to prayer. And here's a taste of that exclusive report.
Islam is America's last hope.
What happens when Muslims take over an American city?
Everywhere where these radical Islamists have touched, what you get is chaos. You get violence. You get the subjugation of women.
So you don't think there's any issue in getting a 7-year-old to wear that kind of dress?
I don't think it's really a bad thing.
It's an astonishing piece of journalism. I'm delighted to be joined now by Stephen Edgington, who put that together for GB News. Steve, welcome to the show. I watched this last night. My jaw was on the floor when I watched it. Please tell us about this town and how it's radically changed in such a short period of time.
In 2021, Hamtramck in Michigan elected a fully Muslim council, the first in the United States. Also, they have a Muslim mayor. And since that time, as you rightly mentioned, they've passed a series of very controversial laws. And that's why I went to this town to find out how Muslims have transformed this American city. It used to be a Polish-dominated town, Polish-American-dominated town, and now it has become a Muslim-majority place. And what they've done is they've passed laws in favor of animal sacrifice in residential properties, including in people's backyards. One person we talked to found a goat carcass in her rubbish bin one day randomly. Furthermore, they have introduced a ban on LGBT flags flying from government buildings, which has angered many of the local liberal left-wing population who say that LGBT people no longer feel safe in Hamtramck. And we've also seen the rise of women wearing burqas, and many residents, locals, said to us that there are some concerns around the subjugation of women, particularly their social role in the family and their sort of subservience to men. So I think the town has transformed hugely in recent years. And to add to this, just down the road in Dearborn, which is a few miles away, recently there was a Muslim rally to do with Palestine where people were chanting "Death to America." So some very controversial issues going on in America at the moment. It's not just in the UK. There's been a huge amount of immigration from Muslim countries to the US as well.
And Steve, in this incredible piece of work, you talk there, we can see on the screen, with an imam, and you put his own social media posts to him. You verbatim just put what he put out about his anti-Semitic comments, and he starts calling you an Islamophobe. He starts denying it. And I was also struck, Steve, by a culture of fear amongst the residents in the town. They're afraid to speak out about this.
I think that's probably right. Some people were afraid to speak to us about this very controversial issue. I did interview various imams, and as you say, I quoted some of their tweets and so on. One of them retweeted something about all Muslims spitting on Israel, meaning that they would drown. I thought that was quite controversial. The particular imam that you were referring to in that clip, he has very close links with the Iranian regime. He is friends, he admits this personally and openly, that he has been friends with previous Iranian presidents and Iranian ayatollahs. Now, what people have to remember is Iran is responsible for funding Hezbollah, a terrorist organization. It persecutes women if they don't wear the niqab or the hijab through lashes. They literally lash them on the back for this crime. And they're also responsible for locking up political prisoners and for torturing prisoners. So for this man to openly admit that he is friends with the Ayatollahs, friends with these presidents, I think is very controversial. And it just shows how radical Islam is spreading across the United States. And it's a real concern.
Now, Steve, you're doing fabulous work out in America. Please tell us, where can GB News find this documentary to watch?
They can go to the GB News YouTube channel and they can see it there. They can watch the full thing, 35 minutes long.
It's great stuff. Steve Edgington, American correspondent for GB News, thank you very much for joining us. Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone who's got in touch with us today. And if you want to get in touch, Bev Turner will tell you how you can do just that.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley in Dundee. The Green Dykes Road, the northbound A92 still shut from the Broughty Ferry Road junction up towards Carlochie Place and queuing for emergency repairs. Northbound M1 still struggling away from Hemel Hempstead at junction 8. That follows an earlier collision. All the lanes are open, but we're still seeing intermittent delays. Now the clockwise M25 junction 23 South Mims. Now the entry slip road there remains partially blocked, a lane shut there, an overturned car still being recovered. In Dalston, in London, the Kingsland High Street remains closed off both ways because of a police incident. If you're heading northbound in Surrey towards the Hindhead Tunnel, the A3, that's still seeing some delays at the moment, all due to an earlier collision. All the lanes are back open, though it's still looking sluggish. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
What about the elections? Because it seems that the King and everything is moving because of it, and we've got a lot of royal engagements and things that happen at this time.
Yes, well, you know, it means that he has to take more time and be at home. He can't go to all the things he wants to do. He's been doing 5 a day, which has probably made Camilla a bit cross. But what they still hope is that they can get the Japanese Emperor and Empress over. That's in July. That they can go to France for the 80th anniversary of the fighting. And he will be able to do 1 or 2 things, and Ascot he's very keen to do. Now, those aren't things that are political in any way. Just want to talk about Harry and Charles's argument, where Harry said he didn't want to stay, he wanted to go to a hotel. And it's come out now that actually King Charles is believed that he was offered St James's, and Princess Anne stays there and Beatrice stays there.
And this was for when Harry came over for his 10th anniversary.
Exactly. And the policemen are wandering around with guns, and there's no chance of actually there being any problem there. So the fact that he said that it wasn't safe for him was not actually a very sensible thing to say, I don't think.
Well, he went to Nigeria, and that is, in the world ranking, it's ranked as quite a dangerous place.
Yes, one of the dangerous places in the world. But now Harry and Meghan have been invited to go to Ghana.
Oh, God. Well, it's interesting because my parents are from Ghana. I have Ghanaian heritage, and I'm thinking she'll probably then claim there's a percentage that she's Ghanaian as well. I'll be like, hang on a minute, you were Maltese, you're also Nigerian,
and
now you're going to say you're Ghanaian and German. Yeah. Come on. Thank you very much.
Squeeze it in.
Yeah, let's get them all in. Angela Levin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. The time is 5:42. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now, I've got a quick email to go through about Ireland. Loads of you have been getting in touch about the political situation in Ireland. John says this: the appetite for change in Ireland is absolutely huge. Michael quickly adds, those chaps in Ireland with the bulldozers taking tents apart, that's how to do it. And now they are in the European Union. And quickly, Sean adds, Ireland needs massive change. The elites are completely out of touch. We don't care about Palestine Island. We care about housing. We care about jobs. We care about getting a doctor's appointment. Now, moving on. In May 1994, iconic lads magazine Loaded launched, serving up a decidedly non-PC diet of sex, drink, football and much less serious matters. It went on to define the 1990s. Now, 30 years to the week, it's come back from the dead with a new look and a new female editor. Now, nobody is more surprised than me, because I used to be the editor of Loaded for 8 years. There's my mush there. Now, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the new improved editor, Danny Levy, the all-new editor of the all-new look Loaded magazine. Danny, welcome to the show. An absolute delight to see there's still life in the old dog Loaded magazine yet. Tell me, what led you to relaunch it?
Thank you, Martin. I'm not sure that I'm the improved editor, but I am delighted to be here. Thanks again. What made us relaunch it? Well, we want to reignite that nostalgia. Not only that, there is nothing out there for men that serves the middle ground. We're targeting that original Loaded audience who miss all of that kind of thing that is no longer around for men. Why are men not entitled their platform, their safe space in society to appreciate beautiful women, read about sport, read about tech, travel, exciting stuff that kind of gets you going, whereas women have got millions of publications they can turn to, and they can say, men, stuff off, that's a women's magazine. Men are not allowed to be red-blooded males anymore, are they? I'm here to champion the men.
Well, that's superb, and you can see on screen there a couple of my magazine covers. They're a little bit, how should you put it, risque. And the new look, though, that I believe is stepping away from that, Danny. So you're kind of cleaning up the act, and also it's very, very unusual. Well, it's to the point of it being unique. That Loaded magazine has a woman as an editor. Danny, and I bet you've been copping a bit of flack for that.
I have, and I did use the word ogle, apparently, in my interview with The Times, and of course people have picked up on that, Martin. But you know what? Male editor, female editor, does it matter? Let's be impartial, let's give men a voice, let's be fair to men. I may disappoint a few men when I say that there will not be any bare breasts anymore, we're not going to see girls bent over with lollipops hanging out their mouths. We did choose to put Liz Hurley on the special edition relaunch issue 30 years later, and I can confirm she still looks 30 years old. But you won't always see females on the cover, and you won't see that much female content throughout Loaded anymore, although we will serve you up with plenty of beautiful women, I can guarantee that, just alongside their more intelligent backstory.
And it's a nice nod back to Liz Hurley. She appeared in issue 2 of Loaded magazine. Those pictures went into the Sun. Sales doubled overnight. Danny, tell me, people watching this, how can they get hold of the products? What do they need to do to find you online?
You can find us online at loadedworld.com. All of the content is 100% free. If you want to become a member, you just get extra perks in terms of discounts, offers on cool stuff. You don't have to become a member to read any of the editorial content. And the special edition print issues will be sent out to all Loaded members.
Well, I've got mine on the way. I signed up, and I tell you what, you got my vote. Look, well done for getting it back. Good work, fella. As we used to say back in the day, the magazine they thought was dead and buried, back from the grave. New editor, Danny Levy, thank you very much for joining us on the show, and I wish you the very best of British with it.
Thanks.
Now, let's bring you some big breaking news. And former Conservative MP Mark Logan has said he is backing Labour at the next general elections, saying the party could bring back optimism into British life. Another defection. Now, Mr Logan represented Bolton North East for the Tories until Parliament dissolved today. He said Labour had been on a journey and now offered centrist politics. And he added that the Tory party was now unrecognisable to the Labour Party. And that is former Conservative MP Mark Logan appears now to be backing the Labour Party. Another piece of bad news for Rishi Sunak on this general election trail. Now, if you want to get in touch with me, please send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, mixed fortunes in our weather as we head through Friday. Best of the dry, fine weather towards the north and the west, but more cloud across eastern England with some showers and still feeling warm though in that sunshine. If we look at the pressure pattern then, you can see this area of high pressure. It's trying to build in across the UK, so settling things down towards the north and the west. But further east, close to that area of low pressure, more cloud and some rain here. So through Thursday and evening and overnight, we do hang on to more cloud down the eastern parts of England, like I said, with some further showery outbreaks of rain spreading their way southwards and some quite brisk winds here once again. Further towards the north and the west though, drier, clearer, and not turning too cold overnight, so we hang on to still that breeze. So temperatures not dropping below 10 to 12 degrees in towns and cities. As we start Friday morning then, we get off to a pretty fine start across parts of Wales and southwest England. Some cloud around to start the morning, but also some sunshine. But then we run into that thicker cloud across central and eastern parts of England with some showery outbreaks of rain affecting Lincolnshire, East Anglia, south east England through the morning. So quite a wet start to the day here. But a fine picture across Northern Ireland, much of Northern England and Scotland. Lots of sunshine to start the day. Just a few showers across the very far north and the west of Scotland. And it's more of the same really as we head through the rest of Friday. Always the thickest of the clouds across central and eastern parts of England, with further shower outbreaks of rain spreading their way southwards, particularly across East Anglia and the southeast of England. So by the afternoon, some pretty heavy showers possible across the southeast, with some thunder possible here too. But elsewhere though, the further north and the west you go, generally more in the way of sunshine, slightly lighter winds as well. So in that sunshine, feeling pleasantly warm. We're looking at highs of 17 to 20 degrees there, which is slightly above where we should be for this time of the year. And it's more of the same as we head into Saturday. High pressure still dominating across most of the country. Still a few showers across the southeast, but elsewhere largely dry. Some cloud around at times, but that cloud will break to give some spells of sunshine. So staying largely settled as we head into Sunday, into the start of next week, with some sunshine. Temperatures rising, 23 degrees there possible in the south.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:51. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now, a couple in Wales have been jailed for a series of what are called dine and dash offences, where people order food and drink but do a runner without paying up. Anne and Bernard McDonough from Port Talbot defrauded restaurants by carrying out a string of offences. Their total unpaid food bills amounted to almost 1,200 quid. Well, joining me now is the chairman of Spice Village Restaurants and Events Hospitality Group, Suleiman Raza, NBE. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. This is beyond the joke. People turning up, nicking food, doing a runner, but at least now they'll enjoy some nice prison food, porridge.
Thank you so much, Martin, for having me at your show. Yes, I'm sure you would agree that this practice has been going on for some time now. And we've seen the trend of dash and dine rising, especially in the recent years, because the laws are probably much more favourable towards these offenders who are just having the food and dashing off. And the most important thing is that there are so many ways of this dashing off, because not just they walk away, but they have adopted new and smart ways of how they can possibly dash away. One of them could be they are having a proper meal, ordering so much food, and right at the end, either they're not happy with the quality, or they want to complain about the portion sizes. And as restaurants, we have very limited resources to tackle these issues and how we can possibly manage these offenders.
And Suleiman, this shameless couple left their teenage child behind while they pretended to go to a cash point, and then at some allotted point, the child did a run. The runner, they were using their children as a cover.
In my experience, we've been in the restaurant industry for over 20 years now, and I've seen usually these offenders smartly dressed up, usually bringing their families along with them. I've seen most of them bringing children alongside. This is not the first time I'm hearing these couples have used their children, but I've seen many, many times they're using their children, smartly dressed. As a restaurateur, we cannot even judge these people. I mean, let alone our staff. We invest a lot of time into training our staff, into judging these kind of people. But it's really a big challenge, because when you're with your children, how much can you do and how much you can look out for, because these people are ordering smartly. They're very smart. They've learned how to play with the system.
Yeah, well, they've been collared for it. The McDonald's are now enjoying prison food. Of course, the more runners they do, the more the prices go up for us. Keep up the good work there. Suleiman Raza, MBE, Chairman, Spice Village Restaurants. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Well, that's all from me for now, but don't forget to join us from 6 a.m. tomorrow. It's Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, followed by Britain's Newsroom at 9:30, of course. And then it's Tom and Emily with Good Afternoon Britain from midday. Now, My Ugly Mush will be back at 3 p.m. tomorrow. I'm Martin Daubney, and this has been GB News. Next up, it's Jubes & Go. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I've very much enjoyed the look down memory lane with Loaded Magazine. Now, it's your weather with Mark Wilson.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's looking rather changeable through the afternoon across much of the country with a mixture of sunshine and showers, most of the showers though towards the east and still staying fairly breezy. If we look at the pressure pattern then you can see why high pressure is trying to build in from the west but low pressure towards the east, and in between we've got a fairly cool northerly breeze coming in across the country. So through the rest of the day, showers largely focused on the east, more organised showery rain spreading its way southwards. Some of that could be heavy as well, but towards the west though, here it will become largely dry with some clear spells overnight. Still quite a breeze overnight, particularly towards that eastern coast, but that will stop the temperatures dropping too low. Temperatures 10 to 12 degrees in towns and cities, but cooler in some rural spots across Scotland and northern parts of England. So as we start Friday morning then, we get off to a pretty fine picture across Scotland to start the day. There will be more cloud towards the northern and the western Isles with some shower outbreaks of rain here, but for the bulk of Scotland, as we head into northern England, Northern Ireland as well, it's a fine start to your Friday morning with lots of sunshine from the word go, just a bit of cloud floating around at times. Generally fine too across parts of Wales, southwest England, just 1 or 2 isolated showers, but then we run into much thicker cloud across central and eastern parts of England with that showery rain continuing to affect parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, East Anglia into the southeast of England as well. Now through the day that showery rain will slowly spread its way southwards, but still some further showers into the afternoon. Again, these could be heavy with the risk of some hail and thunder as well. But elsewhere across the country, still some thicker cloud across central and eastern England, but a fine picture to come across northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland into West Wales and southwest England as well. More sunshine, fewer showers, and in that sunshine feeling pleasantly warm as well. We could see 19 or 20 degrees there towards the southwest of England. Now through the rest of Friday into the evening and overnight, still some thicker cloud, a few showers towards the east, but elsewhere largely dry, clear spells. And as we head into the weekend, turning increasingly fine across the country, lots of sunshine, temperatures start to rise as well, particularly in the south, highs of 23 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Johnny Ratner with the very latest. Big problems up in East Lothian for the A199. That remains closed just north of Haddington off the A1 because of flooding. And in the West Midlands, in the outskirts of Birmingham, the A45 Coventry Road at Sheldon is shut eastbound because of an obstruction. On the M1 in Hertfordshire, and it's still really slow heading north away from Junction 8 at Hemel Hempstead following an earlier collision. The queues remain back to the M25. On the clockwise M25 on the Hertfordshire stretch, a lane is shut on the entry slip at Junction 23 at the A1M where a car's overturned. Recovery work is underway. North London, Kingsland High Street at Dalston is closed for a police investigation. In South London, New Kent Road is shut Elephant and Castle westbound following an accident, and the Ashford Road in Kent is closed at Harwich. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God, are you joking?
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you.
Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text cost